February 8th, 2022 Ojai City Council meeting. We have a quorum. Could we have the roll call, please, Gail?
Mayor Sticks.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Haney.
Here.
Councilmember Blatz.
Here.
Councilmember Francina. Here. Councilmember Wyrick.
Here.
Thank you, Gail. Ryan, will you please do the pledge for us this evening?
Sure.
Thank you.
I have my own flag and everything. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. All right, approval of the agenda. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, could we have the roll call, please, Gail?
Councilmember Blatz.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Haney.
Yes.
Mayor Sticks.
Yes.
Councilmember Francina.
Yes.
Councilmember Wyrick. We seem to
Present, but I think
I see him.
he's having technical issues. Councilmember Wyrick, I think the phone disconnected, so we can see you now, but not hear you. But he is present as we figured that out.
Okay.
He's connecting to audio.
All right, and no presentations this evening, James, correct?
No presentations.
And no commission reports?
No commission reports. Brian Akins is the one chair who is in our lobby, but I know he's speaking on the museum, the community funding, not on the commissioner reports. So.
Okay, thank you. And before we begin, I just want a little reminder to council. I really appreciate passion and enthusiasm, and enthusiasm really means filled with spirit, which is a lovely concept. It's important, though, that we remember the rules in our enthusiasm. So just to review these 3 rules, please raise your hand and wait to be called on, no crosstalk, and bring it back to the chair. Number 2, please be brief and to the point. Number 3, please refrain from comment or deliberative discussion on an agenda item until after we have heard from all members of the public. So thank you very much. And it's always good to have reminders, so I appreciate it. Yes, Susan?
What was number 2?
Be brief and to the point.
Oh, okay. And you can see us all right, right?
Yes, I can.
That's about the only time I'll
Yes.
interrupt. Yeah, okay.
No, I appreciate that.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's move on to public communication. Just a reminder that this is about items that are not on the agenda, and appreciate the public respecting the 3-minute limit in fairness and efficiency. So any public comment this evening?
anyone in the Zoom meeting who would like to speak, please use the raise hand function now. And no speakers have raised their hand.
Okay, great. All right. Well,
I did see, I'm sorry, Mayor, somebody did raise their hand.
I don't.
Was Cynthia K Alvinson.
Oh, and now we've got another hand raised, Corinna Wright. So did Cynthia K Alvinson have her hand raised before?
Yes, so
Okay.
I would suggest bringing her in and then confirming.
Corinna Wright. Okay. So Cynthia K Alvinson, if you are there and you are here to speak, if you can unmute yourself and you can go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. I've never done this before. I don't see anybody. Am I allowed to see people or no?
You should be able to see us unless you're only looking at the speaker. Which
I only see the timer if I get rid of that. Well, anyway, I'll get to the point and be brief. I'm glad you're talking about Drown Avenue. That's very near and dear to my heart because I'm a resident here. And I will speak during that time. But I was hiking a couple days ago up above Foothill, up above in the Pratt Trail, okay? And I was above where the Los Padres National Park begins, or the Land Conservancy. And I noticed at the very top of the hill, there was a big power pole. And I was very perplexed. Why were they bringing a big power pole up the canyon where before there was no power. And I'm concerned because the Thomas fire was started from a transformer now. And why would they be putting something in the back country that we don't need? I called the fire department. They didn't understand. They'd had no information about it. And then I called the city and they said that it was about public works. It was something from California state. Do you know anything about this power pole that's up there at the top of Foothill off the Pratt Trail? If not, I would like to bring that to attention. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And this portion of public comments, we aren't able to get into long discussions, but I will say that we'll look into that and get back to you.
Thank you, Cynthia.
So next we have Corinna Wright. And Corinna Wright, if you're there, if you can unmute yourself and you can go ahead and speak.
Hi, good evening. I'm a little confused on this new format. I wanted to speak on agenda 4. Is that now or do I wait till later?
No, so this is public comment on items not on the agenda.
Okay.
So each item will have its own public comment.
Okay. So I will circle back on item 4. My apologies.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Corinna. We'll see you later. Okay, thank you very much. And we'll move on to the consent calendar. Move to approve.
I'll move to approve.
Second, Warwick.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Gail.
Councilmember Wyrick,
Yes.
Mayor Sticks,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Haney,
Yes.
Councilmember Francina,
Yes.
Councilmember Blatz.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to discussion item number 2, the community organization funding status. Council will receive a status report from 2 of the organizations, the museum and the chamber, and provide feedback. So, James, their presentation.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll briefly note, because I know the agenda looks a little different than usual. I just wanted to make the note that it looks a little different because we have to do the redistricting due to state law requirements. We have to do the redistricting at 6:30 at a time certain. So normally we go to the public hearings first, but because we knew that we would be ahead of the 6:30 hour, we have a discussion item before the public hearing. So just to comment on kind of the explanation for why the agenda looks a little different. But so this first item that we are receiving an update on, when the city council funded or completed the budget this year, there were 3 organizations that received funding from the city of Ojai. Those 3 organizations were the Ojai Valley Chamber of Commerce, the Ojai Valley Museum, and the Ojai Valley Fire Safe Council. 2 of those organizations were funded as part of the standard budget timeline in June of 2021. The Fire Safe Council was funded later. And so when those were funded, council indicated an interest in having a 6-month report back. And so at this point, we had scheduled a 6-month report back for the December city council meeting, but we had a long council meeting that night, so we postponed. And so tonight is basically, it's now a little bit more than 6 months, but it's the 6-month report back. Both the museum and the Chamber of Commerce provided status reports that are included in the packet. We also asked representatives from each to just come and give kind of a brief overview of what they worked on this year and what they're working on for the rest of the year. And with the thought that there'd be an opportunity for the council to ask questions or provide any feedback. And so with that, I believe I see both Wendy Barker and Brian Akins from the museum. And I see the Chamber of Commerce. So we'll go ahead and Gail, can we start with can we let Wendy in for the museum? I believe she's speaking.
Okay. There we go.
And so, hi, Wendy, if you can hear us, we wanted to give you a couple minutes to just kind of give an update on the Ojai Valley Museum's activities for this year.
Okay, good evening, everybody. As James said, we're a little over halfway the current year. We've opened 3 days a week now, as we have been. I'm glad to report that our visitor center is going to open probably within the next 6 weeks or so. We've been just putting a cart outside with information, but we're going to actually open that soon. We started Town Talks again, and then Omicron hit, so postponed, canceled some of those. On Saturday, we just had a book signing with Lanny Coffer. This was an outdoor event, very well attended, over 50 people for the talk. We started school tours again, which is great. I think we've already done 3. We have one this coming week and another one scheduled for this month. And so for 2 years, we didn't have any school tours. So we're really glad to get that back. And we're on the 3rd of 3 exhibits right now. We started off with Finding Light with the Ojai studio artists. Right now, it's Ojai Warming, looking at climate change through the lens of local rare and endangered plants and animals. We've gotten very good feedback from that. And we're working on our next exhibit. It's a history exhibit. It'll start in April, which is called Ojai at the Crossroads, 1947 and now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any questions or any feedback from council?
Oh, Wendy, so the cart with the maps and the brochures and magazines is out in front even when the museum is not open?
Yes, it's out 7 days a week right now.
Uh-huh.
And you know, we've lost the vast majority of our volunteers, and that's a really small little room, but I just cleaned it out. It's gotten a little bit of a refresh, and we are going to start opening that at least some days. And then when we can't physically open it, we will continue to use the cart. And we see people at the cart every day.
I think that's a really good thing with the visitor center closed. So I'm really glad that you offer that. It's a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bill and then Randy.
Wendy, I've been really impressed with the programming you've been putting on. How's the public participation been? You know, your counts coming in and both the special events and just normal everyday entry. Because I see a lot of people going through the front door.
Yeah, Saturdays are really good for us. You know, before the pandemic, we were open 6 days a week, but some of those midweek days were, you know, attendance was really low. So even though we're only open 3 days a week now, attendance is not much lower than pre-pandemic. Saturdays are really great. Fridays and Sundays, kind of hit and miss. Events, you know, we started with some town talks that were well attended. And then, you know, Omicron, so we postponed we will do those at some point, and we've canceled some others. But you know, Lanny Coffer's book signing, which was outdoors with masks, very well attended. So I'm really happy with how things are going. And the national research shows that museums are probably not going to get back to pre-pandemic numbers for probably at least another 2 or 3 years. So we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, you're doing pretty good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Randy?
Well, briefly, Mayor, I just wanted to thank them for all that they're doing for this community.
Yeah.
You know, even if it's 3 days a week under these conditions, it's better than none. I read today where it looks like we might be opening up our indoor facilities if you have all of your COVID shots. So that's going to bring an increase in participation, I'm hoping, to places like the museum. So good work, great work, and just keep doing it.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. We really appreciate your support so much.
Well, I just want to echo what Randy just said, Wendy. Thank you so much for staying flexible and adaptable in the last 2 years because it's been challenging, and still maintaining programming. The Ojai warming exhibit was incredible. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Wendy, I think Brian had said he'd defer to you, so I will not bring, is that your understanding as well? So we won't bring Brian in at this point?
Yeah, yes, it is. He wanted me to talk tonight, which I'm
Okay.
happy to do.
Okay, thank you.
And
Thank
great,
you.
the school groups are coming back. That's wonderful.
Yeah, we're very excited to see kids coming back. So we got some kids from Thatcher coming this week, and we haven't seen anybody from Thatcher for a long time. So yay.
Yay. All right. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so with that, so the two reports were going to be from the museum, and then the second report is from the Chamber of Commerce, and I believe Jamie Fleming is on. And so Gail, if you could bring in the, he's listed as Chamber of Commerce. Yeah. Okay, and so Jamie, if you wanted to just give a couple-minute update on the things the Chamber is working on, and then again, we'll open it up to council feedback or questions.
I'd be happy to. Like we've been already discussing the last 2 minutes, COVID has just caused such a roller coaster, and it's amazing. Right during the fall, when I thought we were in a great moment of coming out from it all, to hit such a spike and all the things we've had to be dealing with on that. I track the numbers, as I think you guys know, every 2 days from the county, and it's nice to see them coming down. I know they're really still high, but they're at least headed the right direction. So I have some hopes that this is going to be a good spring. Last time we talked back in June and July, we were in the middle of our test of the Saturday trolley, which I still feel is such a strong idea, or something for us as a city to keep looking at, just so we can start using a simple process of mass transportation to get people from going in their cars, hopscotch, playing hopscotch across our city to go to a restaurant or to different things. And so I'm still hoping that we can look at that in a serious way once we get back into the more crowded weekends and all, because I think that express between the two ends of our city, from the end to the other end, would made some sense. And I'd still like to at least push for it to maybe be free, because I think then people will be more willing to get on it and really do what I think is right. As you saw, I wrote up a pretty long write-up on all the things we've been doing. On the business development, of all the different things I was looking at this fall, I'd say two really stood out with some forward movement. And the first one was the tiny house industry. I was working with Vina quite a bit, and she invited me down, and she asked me, how could we get cottage industries in Ojai more involved in that industry? Because she and I both agreed that it's an Ojai brand. And so I'm happy to report that we were able to get Plush, Gloria with Plush, to be doing the cushions and the sheets and linens and things like that. Fire Stick is in conversations about doing pottery and stuff. So we're already building a slight cottage industry of trying to support that industry, which I think is very Ojai. Obviously, there's a lot of things we're trying to do with, and being patiently waiting for the bring back the Blue Company with their plastics credits to finally get funded, because that's going to be, I think, a windfall for Ojai when it comes around to a company here in the environmental arena. But I'm most proud of last September, I had mentioned to you, I think in July, that I really felt Ojai is such a location of people and technology, software and what have you. And the more I kept digging around and companies kept coming in to visit or get tours of Ojai, I found that the media technology, especially the immersion technologies, was really becoming prevalent. And a lot of the top experts in the world were actually in the Ojai region. And so we formed the Media Technology Alliance, and we hosted our first get together. I was grateful that Bill Wyrick came to represent the city. And we had about 30 top media technology experts all in one room talking, and it was very, very inspirational for me, because the feedback we got was so positive about Ojai, which is my whole goal, is that we're having another meeting at the end of February on the 25th, which will be a medium-sized meeting because of COVID. But we're planning in the spring to have another big follow-up where we'll have all the big guns come back in. And each time I talk to these people who came, they always ask me about Ojai. And I have a feeling we're going to keep adding more people in that industry to Ojai, which will be really, I think, good. First Fridays, you know, the chamber stepped up to try and help support all the businesses downtown. And that's been a huge challenge, because the only thing that the chamber can really do, we can't put a gun to store owners to stay open. But the one thing we can do is try and provide a reason for locals to come downtown and enjoy our beautiful downtown in the evenings. And so every first Friday, we lined up music in different locations all across downtown and tried to encourage the stores to stay open and what have you. Just meant, and we stopped it when daylight savings changed, because it just is too hard to have music in the grassy, you know, arcade area or across the street. Or so our plan is to start that back up April 1st, because that's the weekend after daylight savings changes. And I think it's going to be something that we're just not going to give up on, because I think hopefully you've enjoyed seeing the lights downtown. Our downtown can be a beautiful place for the evenings and for people to go. Joy I've had, I think, in the last, each year just seems to be getting better and better, is the relationships I keep building between the city and having businesses trust me as the person to go to. Because it just seems like frequently during each week, we get calls of people who either need me to help them discuss a CUP issue, discuss a code issue, discuss a planning commission permit. But a majority of these calls we're getting, believe it or not, are where they want me to direct them to the correct city department, because they're not always sure who to go to. Sorry, I've been under the weather, but I didn't want to miss tonight. And so that value, I think, just keeps getting better and better. And I just have enjoyed helping so many businesses this last fall, and already this spring, I can see it already building. Broadband, finally, we're getting to a place where, as I've mentioned before, I meet every month on the Broadband Consortium Council. And the value of that, of what the Broadband Consortium Council tells me, is Ojai is one of the regulars, along with Moore Park and Oxnard. It's critical for broadband and the Ventura County. And so I've been in conversations even 2 weeks ago with Bill Simmons, who's the head of the consortium, and he has now informed me that Ojai looks like it might be in line, and they will do the work with me to get a technology assistance grant, so that we can actually start working more on our own backbone, which I think I put a map in the pamphlet for you guys. But broadband is probably 2 years away from actually connecting, but there's a lot of work we need to do in our city to actually be ready for it. And trenching and building the broadband backbone is one thing that we could probably start doing with the 100,000. And so I'll keep that as a hot burner. Hopefully that'll come in this spring, but they think it's going to be in a couple months. Bill Wyrick was wonderful to join me in a meeting I had with the CEO and the chairman of the board of Global Green last fall. And Global Green proposed that maybe it might be valuable to Ojai to actually certify our buildings as well healthy buildings. So many buildings nowadays get certified as green, but that doesn't mean the environment you're breathing and sitting in is healthy. So right now, the plan is that we are going to, I've already had them twice to Ojai. Because of COVID, we've had to cancel the last 2 tries. But in the next couple of months, I'm hoping to have them come so that we can really get our hands around what they can do and the value, if this is worth it, to have our building certified to be healthy inside, not just environmentally friendly. And of course, the last thing I wanted to just review is the Winter Wonderland downtown. I hope that you get a smile as much as I do every time I drive down Ojai Avenue. It just suddenly makes our downtown feel like a wonderful place to walk around. The stores, if you notice across the street, mirrored it with twinkle white lights. It just kind of makes it magical. And I've never seen so many people walking around down there, even in the cold. It's been a little bit of a labor of love. And I also want to thank the 2 Rotary clubs that joined me, because I needed the labor, and they were wonderful. They just, without hesitation, both Rotary clubs stepped up to help us get the lights up. But we had to jury rig the whole thing. There are extension cords, there are timers, and you'd be surprised. We have to go check it almost every day because kids can't help themselves. They want to either turn the lights on, they want to unplug them, who knows what's going on, but it is a constant little bit of a trial right now because it's jury rigged. And my hope is, if the city really loves what we did, and for next year, if we really want to take it a little more seriously, it'd be great if we could figure out how we could make the connections and the timers a little more professional so that people can't tamper with them, because we're just taking turns going out there every afternoon to make sure that they'll work.
It was so great, Jamie. I'm sorry to interrupt. It's 6:30. We have a public hearing.
Sorry.
No. And do you mind staying here so we can ask questions after the public hearing? We just have to start right on time at 6:30.
That'd be fine.
Okay. I hope you feel better. I'm sorry you're not feeling well.
Well,
thank you.
That's okay.
Okay, we'll move on to the public hearing then. This is item number 3, the 4th City Council redistricting public hearing, an introduction of the 3rd draft map. And so we'll receive input. We received input from residents and City Council, and then we will have the final meeting in April.
Thank you. And I did notice there were a couple of hands up for that last item, so I'll just, in case they are confused, we'll get back to that item after the public hearing. So if you had your hands up, I'll make sure we call on you. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Kay here from Redistricting Partners, who's going to walk through a brief presentation on the redistricting process. This is our 4th public hearing. And so we just briefly before I hand it over to Kay, we had developed 2 maps that had come to council. After some feedback, we've developed a 3rd map that is presented today, and Kay will go into a little more detail on each of those maps. So with that, Kay, I'll hand it over to you.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Hello everybody, my name is Kay Montpleasure. I am a project manager with Redistricting Partners. And let's go ahead and get started. So tonight we are going to cover a few things. We're going to go over our Fair Maps Act criteria for redistricting. We have 3 draft revisions that we'll go through, and then we're going to go through next steps that you all can take. So first off, the Fair Maps Act was passed by legislature, mandates a set of criteria that we follow when drawing district plans. And so this criteria is ranked, and the first of these is that districts are of relatively equal size. When we talk about equal size, we're talking about all people, not citizens or voters, so total population. They also have to be contiguous. So what we mean by that is that districts don't hop or jump. In other words, we can draw it with one line And we maintain communities of interest. And a community of interest is really just a group of people that would benefit from being maintained in one single district. We follow city and census designated place boundaries, and we keep districts compact in both appearance and function. So with more cities and counties using community-based redistricting, we have moved redistricting out into the public with maps driven by community of interest testimony. So input from the community is processed with multiple ways for the public to engage. And rules for the process emphasize the importance of traditional criteria and minimizing divisions of neighborhoods and releasing maps for feedback. So today we will see plans to spark more public engagement. So we have 3 maps to review. Oh, I see a typo here. We have 3 plans, Plan A, B, and C. And so each plan has an overview, a data table, and then the plan packets also come with individual district pages and web maps that kind of look like Google Maps that you can really zoom in on and look exactly where those boundaries are. So these are the current lines for the city of Ojai. And we can also see the data table here. So in each district, you can see the populations and then the deviations from that ideal number that we want to get to. So the total deviation is when you add the absolute values of the highest and the lowest district. And so here our smallest district is District 3 with -8%. And our largest district is 4 with 7.9% for a total deviation of 15.9%. So what we need to do is we need to get under a 10% deviation in order to equalize population. And then we also have individual maps of each of the districts, and those will be in your packet, but we will not be presenting them tonight. So draft map A, we're going to do first. It was created based on public submissions from Districtor. And you can see the submissions on districtor.org. And both of these submissions moved the northern part of District 1 into District 2, and it extended District 1 southwest into District 4. So this is draft plan A. Like I said, the submissions moved that northern part of District 1 into 2, and then extended District 1 southwest into District 4 along North Ventura Avenue. And District 4 picks up some of District 1 and 2 in the center. And then District 3 maintains the same lines, and the boundary along District 3 and District 4 stays the same. So this is an overlay of the current lines with our draft plan A. So the black border is draft plan A, and the current lines are the colors. So you can see all those changes made there. And so here we can see that we've balanced the population, and we have a total deviation of 9.3%, so we're underneath that 10% deviation. And next up, we have draft map B, which is a minimum change map, so the least amount of changes to your lines. And this plan seeks to balance population. So here we see draft plan B with those minimum changes. So the eastern area of District 4 was moved into District 3. The original boundary was Gridley Road, and this draft map proposes the boundary as East Ojai Ave. So as you can see with the overlay, the only changes made were between District 3 and 4, where 3 picks up that area of District 4. And we can see that we have balanced the population for a total deviation of 9.8%. And then we have a new map for you tonight, which is draft map C, and it keeps the VMU intact and balances population. And so this was requested at the previous meeting to have a map that unifies the VMU. So this plan actually looks a little different from the other plans because it does not have district numbers. Because as you can see with the current lines overlay, the districts have changed pretty drastically. So we didn't want to assume which district was what, which we, if this map is chosen, we'll go through sequencing to figure out which district is which. And then as we can see here, the populations are very balanced with a total deviation of 2.4%. And so just to look back, we have draft plan A, which was created based on public submissions. Draft plan B, which is a minimum changed map made to balance population. And then draft plan C, which was requested at the previous meeting, and it keeps the VMU intact. And so we can use these maps in a number of ways. So first, we want to identify, or we can identify preferred plans with an understanding that none of these are final plans and we can make any edits to them. You can suggest possible changes or feedback. Adjustments can be made to any of these draft plans. And then we can choose a map for adoptions, either maps A, B, or C, and adopt the final map in the next public hearing on March 8th. Or you can provide direction on any changes to maps A, B, or C to make a new map on March 8th. And final draft maps must be adopted by April 17th. So that is my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Kay. Much appreciated. Bill and then Randy.
Kay, could you just repeat, if you can easily, the 3% deviations between A, B, and C?
Yes, absolutely. So
I thought we ought to state all three of them together.
Absolutely. So plan A has a total deviation of 9.3. Plan B, total deviation of 9.8. And then plan C has a total deviation of 2.4.
Okay, thank you.
Randy?
Mayor, the on map C, Pleasant Avenue is divided in half. North of it is in one district and south is in another. And the same thing on Drown. Half of it is in one district and half of it is in another. Is there any way that can be looked at and rectified so that all of Pleasant is in one district and all the Drown? It looks like if you move Drown all the way over to Daly, that might do it, but you're going to have to look at your numbers. But I would recommend a look at that on map C. And then on map B, the only question I had was what would happen if we looked at moving section 3 over to, and it's really hard to see on these maps, and I blew this puppy up. Map B, section 3 ends at what street? Is that Signal?
The original boundary is Gridley Road, and
No. Ojai Avenue and North Signal. So that's the southwest corner of map B, section 3. Does that help you?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Okay, southwest corner. So that's Ojai Avenue, and it looks like North Signal. Correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, if we moved that over to, what's the next street over? Is that
Ventura Street?
Ventura, or is it?
Ventura.
It is Ventura to the west.
To the west, yeah.
So if you moved it one
Ventura.
street to the left or even 2 streets, how would that impact that district? And what might you have to give up to balance on map B? Those are the 2 things that I still see this fingerlet in section 2 or in area 2 coming down into 3, but I'm sure you did that because of some type of number. But again, you've split that street in half where half of it is in one district and the other half is in another. So I don't know if that's, I know one of our minimizing splitting neighbors, wasn't that one of our goals? And
Yeah, keeping communities of interest together.
yeah, so those are my thoughts. I'm not sure if anyone's looked at them that way, but I would sure like to see those brought back that, you know, with those thoughts in mind.
And if I could add, Mayor and Council, with that direction, assuming there's, I would look to see the rest of the council as well. One option would be to have the redistricting partners folks put those two maps together and then come back next time with those two plus the existing three. If the council is not in a mind to make a decision tonight, new maps can be brought back. Bear in mind that the council cannot adopt a map unless it's been made available on the website for at least 7 days before adoption. So it forces this iterative process, but we have plenty of time. It's only February. Thank you.
So, well, if you're, well, I'd like to listen obviously to Souza and to the mayor and to Ryan.
We're still on questions though. Any more questions?
Okay.
Yeah, and then we have to open it for public hearing, right?
Right.
All right, any more questions? Only questions. Souza?
Okay, well, my question doesn't have to do with the map per se. It has to do with the effect, the impact on the city council. So it's correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but it's my understanding that right now I'm the only council member that was actually elected by District 4. And no matter what happens to District 4, I remain for the next 3 years in the current District 4.
That's correct.
Correct, because people keep saying, well, it's all going to change. What are you worried about? But that's not true. I have to stay within the current District 4. So my next question is, this coming election, when all the council members, except for the mayor who's at large, will be elected by district, they cannot move out of their district for 4 years, correct? Now, if they run for another term, they cannot move for 8 years. And if they run again, they cannot move for 12 years.
That's correct with one caveat. 12 years out, will we hit another census and do another redistricting in 2031? But aside from that caveat, yes, at this next election, 3 seats in districts to be determined will be elected from those districts. And thus, those members of council who are elected in the November 2022 election will have to live in their district from which they're elected for their 4-year term. As to you, Councilmember Francina, you'll have to continue to live and be domiciled in your district that you were elected from in 2018 through the end of your, in 2020, through the end of your term in 2024. So as to you, stay in the existing district and then your position is secure. So the net effect may well be that a portion of the city is doesn't have somebody elected from that district for until the next cycle kicks through, depending on how the sequencing is set. And at this point, I'll note that the sequencing is up to the council. There's nothing automatic about this. As noted, you've seen in draft maps A and B, which relatively easily map to existing districts. The redistricting partners folks have provided a recommended mapping and sequencing, but obviously it's still up to council. And of course, if the council were to go with draft map C or a version thereof with the adjustments as discussed, then that would be up to the council to decide how to sequence it.
Okay. But am I correct? I have two questions related. If I'm in the current District 4, if that changes, what happens if I decide to run again?
If you decide to run again in 2024, you will need to be domiciled within that District 4 or whatever number you hold.
So if, let's say that 4 becomes 3.
Right.
And so what happens to the current district? You know, it's so crazy if you think about it. The more you think about it, the crazier it is in our little town.
It is.
but basically nobody can move except within their little district. They have to stay, if they keep running, they have to stay.
Right, if they wish to remain on
their
council, to keep
district.
running, yes.
Yeah.
It
They
blocks
can't
intra-city movement.
they can't, move. There isn't like a 1-day grace period where they can move and then run for a different district. That's not possible. They always have to run in their district.
Now, somebody could move. There is a possibility at the very end of a term, but the issue is the timing between the candidacy papers and the election. You could imagine being elected in District 1, then move to District 2 and run from District 2. But when you have to certify your candidacy in August, you will have to live in either one or two. You can't live in both. So you might have to give up District 1 to then run for District 2.
Okay,
so you'd have a gap
way
there.
There is like a little escape route.
Right, but it would probably mean a 3 or 4 month vacancy on council because of the gap between the election and when you have to declare your candidacy. When you declare your candidacy, you have to declare where you live under perjury. Penalty of perjury.
It might be good to just write that down if it's not already written out somewhere. Okay.
What we intend to do is once we have a map recommended, whether tonight or next time, the draft resolution that will be in the packet will include draft sequencing and an explanation of the staff report of what that means, subject, of course, to council decision.
All right, thank you. Sorry about all the time it took, but a lot of people wonder about that, not just me. So thank you.
Randy, you have another question?
Yeah, I think Susan was looking for the term carpetbagger. You know, when you
Randy, do you have a question?
Oh, I was trying to clarify what she was looking for.
Okay.
I don't actually know what that means.
Okay, let's go ahead and open the public hearing.
And just really quickly, I wanted to get back to Mr. Haney's question or feedback about the map. So we'll definitely look at making those changes, but we aren't able to split census blocks. So that could be the reason why those roads are split down the middle, because we have to follow census blocks. So I'll look into it and see if we can fix that. But if we aren't able to, then the reason is because we're not allowed to split them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. All right, now we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Thank you so much, Kay. Any public comments, Gail?
Anyone in the Zoom meeting who would like to speak, please use the hand raise function now. And we've got 2 people. I'm going to bring in Corinna Wright first. One moment. Okay. Corinna Wright, you should be able to speak. If you're muted, please unmute yourself and you can go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to add the point that if you are representing a district, obviously you should live in that district. I don't think that moving out of your district should happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Corinna.
And one moment. Next, we have Jacob Thompson Fisher. You should be able to speak. If you're muted, please unmute yourself and you can go ahead.
I'm actually not public comment. I'm with Redistricting Partners. I simply wanted to make sure staff knew I was here.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Jacob. All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and we'll move on to discussion. Bill?
Yeah, I think it's important that we did this exercise with option C because, as I've mentioned before, the past studies that we've done on communities of interest were not well reflected in Map A and Map B. And Map C does, I think, much better reflect the, especially the Sargent Town planning exercise. And what a lot of people intuitively know in terms of what Sargent Town planning called the downtown walking core is one of the stronger communities of interest. And And, you know, I think A and B did not really reflect that. I'm also pleased that it has the smallest population deviation. It turns out that A and B are just below the limit. C is turns out I had no idea that would happen, but that's a positive as well. So it becomes the most balanced, the most, I think, reflective of the communities of interest based on past studies that we've done. And I like the direction that one is going. I do understand the concerns that Randy brought up, and so I wouldn't have any problem going through another iteration where we look at some of these changes in these three options. But I'm glad that we have another. I'm glad with this option C came out, because it, to me, really gets to the core value of communities of interest and balanced. And so I'm glad we did the exercise, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Bill, Randy?
Real quickly, if we're in agreement that B and C are the two we want to look at, we could just remove A and save K some time. That would be my recommendation, if we're all for that.
Thank you. I like B personally, because I think it's the most it's the easiest to use, north, south, east, west. It's the most symmetrical. And also that the business district is divided among council members instead of just going to one, person. So it's my 2 cents. Bill?
Yeah, and I think that's where I would take issue. I think that if you read the Sergeant Town Planning Report, first of all, the business district is, extends basically all along Ojai Avenue. It's not just downtown. So you have the East Ojai part is not part of the option C, nor is the west part of the business district. But they talked a lot about the importance of the walking downtown core. And I just don't think it's a good idea to pinwheel that strong community of interest. So that's why I would go with C as it's currently formed. But I would agree also with Randy that maybe we it sounds like you're looking at B. So why don't we drop A and look at this B and C from now on?
Randy?
Mayor, I like to B too for the same reasons. And I also like Bill's idea regarding bringing a majority of the VMU or in that downtown pocket closer together. So that's what I'm saying. One more look at it, I think, is a good thing for all of us. But I think all the points we're making tonight are fair, and it's about creating balance. And so I agree with your statement, and I agree with Bill. So.
Anybody else?
Can I quickly, Mayor, Kay, are we able to, I know we had talked about being able to show kind of in real time, maybe what the change could look like. Are we able to do that?
Yes, yeah, that's why Jacob's here. So
Okay.
Jacob, we're looking for not splitting the streets in draft map C of Pleasant and Drown Street, seeing if we can keep that street intact, and also in B, extending District 3 to Ventura Avenue.
Yeah, I think it'd be worth us kind of getting a sense for maybe how that would impact it and seeing if we want to explore that further.
Sure. So as a point of reference, if we migrate the border of District 3-4 from Signal to Ventura, that will have little to no impact on their population deviation. We're talking a total of 11 persons, it looks like, off the top of my first view here. However, it will still create a border down the center of a street, because that is where census boundaries are. Census boundaries are always along street lines where available. So there will still be a border. It'll simply be along Ventura Street instead of Signal. That's absolutely an easily actionable change. The change for Plan C, I have not looked at yet, so it would take me a moment to bring that up. But again, that assuming it's simply moving one line by a matter of one block or one street over, it is generally going to be actionable with little to no trouble. The challenges come in the fact that census boundaries always follow streets where available, which means that if you're concerned about splitting one side of the street from another, you have a choice to make on which street gets split one side from the other, rather than simply not splitting it. When we stop using census blocks, we run into a lot of issues with defensibility and with explaining where borders are, and that creates some different problems. So it is something that can be researched, but it is not something that we ever recommend.
Okay, I think I want to understand Councilmember Haney on map C. I think the idea was to move, right now the one district ends on Drown, and I think the idea was to move it District C to end one street to the west on Daly, or did I get that backwards?
If you're talking to me, I didn't hear a definitive statement from this gentleman. Is it Jacob? I didn't hear if Pleasant or if Drown were census streets, or they both are census streets.
That's why I wanted to make sure we understood, because I think so I guess Jacob, if Drown, it's currently on Drown, which I assume means that that's the end of the census block. And then I think the idea would be to move it to Daly, which I think, if I understood, you were saying that the main streets are typically census blocks. So could we move that border from Drown over to Daly?
Yes. So with that plan open and looking at it, yes, we could use Daly as a border. However, moving the border from Drown to Daly moves 212 persons.
Yeah, it's a very densely populated portion,
which creates some serious deviation issues. It skyrockets your deviation to about 24%. So in order to do that, you would have to then do some population readjustment between your districts, what we have labeled as C and D, and that would have to pass through one of the other districts. So that would have to place additional population from D into either B or A, and then it would have to pull that population further from B or A into C. So we'd have to do a lot of work to make that happen. If that's a very specific change that is specifically requested by the board, then we're happy to do the research and create a draft that incorporates that change.
Okay, so that draft would come back at a future meeting, I think.
Correct.
Thank you, Jacob. Bill and then Randy.
Yeah, while we have you, the gentleman, I'm sorry, I missed Jacob. Yeah. So if we wanted to concentrate on B and C and drop A, where would we have to get to in order to be have the sequencing done for C to go along with the sequencing for B for future comparison?
You can compare plans without sequencing in place.
Okay.
You can apply the sequencing at any stage. The only thing is that the sequencing is a part of your draft that has to be filed, and council can tell you the specific timelines that are relative to your city, but the general Fair Maps code is 10 days.
Okay.
So you have to apply sequencing before your final adoption vote, and you have to apply it ahead of time, but we can prepare drafts without sequencing. You can look at them, you can compare them, we can bring you sequencing options at the time. Then you can discuss and determine, and then they rest for a few days. There's a little cooling off period, so to speak, and then you approve them.
So that decision on our part isn't necessary for us to move forward if we want to concentrate on B versus A.
Correct.
I mean, B versus C, excuse me. Okay.
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
Sequencing can happen independent. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But it does have to happen before the April deadline. So
yes, sir.
We will sort that. Our intention would be to bring the precise timing back with sequencing sorted out.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's the same 7-day in advance deadline, although we'll double check. And what at this point I think we bring forward is we would probably, assuming there's concurrence, we would bring forward to the March 8th hearing, a draft resolution by which the council could adopt map B or map C. And if redistricting partners can make it work, an adjusted map C that makes that change from drown to daily, assuming that can be done with everything else, and a resolution and draft sequencing. So we can bring all that back on March 8th, subject, of course, to council confirmation.
Thank you, Matt. Randy?
Well, I was going to speak to the same thing. It's one of the benefits of how, and when we started this, by going as early as we did, we've given ourselves plenty of space to actually work. So I'm thinking that all of this is doable. It's moving the schedule around if James has to. And if James has to call a special meeting for a short presentation on this and a vote to move it forward, we could do that also. Is there a question for Matt or for Kay or Jacob? Is there a waiting period in between tonight's presentation and the next? Or can it be sooner versus later? Do we have to wait 10 days? Do we have to wait 20 days?
No, there's no
time frame.
There's no waiting period forcing between now and the next one. We had just
other than April 15th.
Yeah, the only delay is operational.
Yeah, so it's just us turning around the maps, and then we do have to put the notice in the newspaper a certain amount of time before, and also post. These have a special requirement of posting the maps 7 days before too. So we can probably turn them around. Well, right now the plan is March 8th. Doing it sooner than that, I think we could, but it's tight. It's tight. So just depends what we want to do. So,
Bill?
Just to express a wish, a preference that I hope, as you have them now drawn, the C is so much more balanced than A and B. I would hope that when we make adjustments, we can, not lose that balance in that we currently have in C. But that's just it's not an absolute. I just wanted to express that preference.
We'll keep C as an option. We'll just come back with an additional map, an additional draft.
Yeah. So we'll basically have CA and CB or C1 and C2.
Exactly.
Okay. But, and I, like I said, I'm in agreement with Randy that we drop A and just look at B and C, maybe with a couple variants.
Sounds good. Do we need a motion here?
No final action, so consensus would be fine.
Okay. All right.
Obviously, if there's opposition, that can be registered as well.
Okay. I think we all have consensus. Agreed? Okay.
Agreed.
All right. Thank you so much, Kay. Thank you, Jacob. Much appreciated. That's a lot of work.
We'll see you on March 8th.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Our pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right, we will return to item 2.
I was going to 4.
We have Jamie. We have Jamie.
Yeah, we still got Jamie. Is it possible to get Jamie back in here, Kale?
I do see he's still here, so if you can bring him back in. And
don't be sad a cost drop.
Yeah, apologies to everyone for the shuffle. It's always the time certain on the redistricting is always a challenge to work around. So.
Thank you for your patience, Jamie. Much appreciated. So we just heard your presentation, so it's time for questions from council. Any questions, council?
Jamie there?
Yeah.
I'm here.
I'm trying to remember where we left off, Jamie, but first
Winter
of all,
Wonderland.
what?
Winter Wonderland.
Excuse me?
Winter Wonderland.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. I love seeing the lights at night, and I hope that we can do what you said. Have more professional timing and plugs and all that. But I just want to say, when I read this report, I just inwardly cheered. I thought it was fabulous. I thought everything was heading in the right direction for what we want for Ojai. And I don't remember if you were able to, the one thing that, every part had something that really caught my attention as a good thing for Ojai. But I read on page 1 of the attachment B, how you were going to meet with Friends Ranch to discuss the possible benefits Terex could bring to Ojai citrus industry. Perhaps they could reduce their use of pesticides. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. I already talked to Emily and sent her all the information on that company, but because of COVID, the two tries that they had to come to Ojai have had to be postponed. But I'm really hoping that they have something that might really work and help, because the pesticide thing is what really jumped out at me also, especially with some of the latest issues with some of the neighbors. And I thought if they have a better solution, that would be a win-win for everybody.
Yes. So yeah, I was really happy to see that you're working on that. Thank you.
On that subject, if I could say, Pixie tangerines, I was floored when I read the article in the Ojai Quarterly. I had no idea that our Pixie tangerine industry was having such a tough time right now in making sales, and they're dropping fruit instead of selling it. The chamber has already stepped up and put in the permits to put the pennants up for April to celebrate Pixie Tangerine Month. But I just want everyone on the council to know, as a city, I'm hoping we can really rally and figure out how we can help, because pixies, I think, are such an Ojai thing. I am going to do what I can to also get the word out to restaurants. Last year, and we'll do the same this year, we're going to go and deliver pixies to all the stores that want them, and we were delivering them every week so that they would have them out in front and what have you. But I'm not sure if any of you read that article, but I was a little concerned.
Yeah. Well, Mayor, may I say? Yeah.
Sure, we're still on questions, though, just remember.
Oh, we're on questions? Okay.
Question, Randy?
You know what, I can save those questions when we do discussion. I'd like to see if we have any public comments after Bill.
Okay. Bill, you have any questions?
Real quick, Jamie, it appears reading between the lines that working together, we've succeeded in getting the county to kind of change their thinking and seriously take the bike trails as a serious option, and a cost-effective option for the broadband in the terms of trenching the horse trail. Is there been a little bit of a shift there from county?
Actually, no, the middle mile part that would be from Ventura up to Casitas and whatever, using that trail, has not been agreed to yet, but I know that that's going to be agreed to. Right now, the backbone in Ojai, they love the idea of using that trail so far. I've had to go out and do measurements to make sure that at least it's a 10-foot spacing, at least in the dirt, so that it's be cost effective to be able to do the trenching. So right now I'm focused on city limits, Ojai, using that as the backbone.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Just a couple questions. Jamie, well, first of all, gratitude. Thank you so much for all you've done, especially the Winter Wonderland was amazing. And it's been a challenging time the last 2 years, so thank you. My question is, the council has identified the top two priorities as broadband and diversifying the economy. Would it be possible to get a progress report on those two items specifically in, say, 3 months? Or,
I can do an update anytime, but we'll be probably doing a presentation to you again probably in May and June, which I could definitely give you another idea.
Okay, and specifically the progress that's been made in those two areas, would it be possible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, much appreciated. And where do you stand on the formula business item? I know that's a hot topic around town.
Well, we have a store owner who has taken the lead on that, and right now it is waiting for a meeting to take place with Lucas to discuss it further. So I've been copied on all those because I really feel it's important to keep that alive. And with COVID and everything else going on, people's schedules just have not been able to get to it. But yes, it is definitely on our list for the spring of something to aim for. That is definitely something I like to see us look at.
Thank you, much appreciated. Okay, we'll go ahead and take public comment. No?
Yeah, and I had noticed two people with their hands up, so I'll let Gail call on them, but it was Bill Miley and Tony Records who both also still have their hands up. So those were the two people from earlier as well. So Gail,
And
go ahead.
anyone else in the Zoom meeting who would like to speak, please use the hand raise function now. And I will call on Bill Miley first. Mr. Miley, you should be able to speak if you're, there you go. Go ahead.
I am unmuted. Okay, as you know, Bill Miley. So my point of view is from an 89-year-old. I've lived here since 1968 with my family. So you recall that I supported these two contracts at budget time. I've read the reports from the museum and the chamber. They both show positive results. The museum continues its stable foundational approach to showing the strengths and resiliency of this Ojai Valley historical institution. I want that put on a plaque, by the way. Good results for city funds. The Ojai Valley Chamber of Commerce report is extensive, shows lots of activities. They do what I would hope the funds are intended for: cooperating, investigating, supporting, aiding, facilitating, problem solving, the smells, and building relationships. Especially encouraging is the broadband effort, the media events, and the aid to businesses going through city permitting. That's really good. So this is great results for the city funds that we contract with. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
And next we have Tony Records. One moment. Okay, Tony Records, if you're there, if you would please unmute yourself and you can go ahead and speak.
Yeah, hi, Mayor, members of the council. This is Robin Gerber. I apologize, I don't know how to change the name on the Zoom account in this context. So surprise, surprise, my husband does not want to comment. I'm going to comment for him, let's say. You know, I could be forgiven for anyone else thinking that the report from the Chamber of Commerce was a report to the Chamber Board, which you are certainly not. You know, the Chamber of Commerce, which by the way has gotten $291,000 in 2018, is an organization to advocate for its members, but it's doing it at tax expense. The mission statement says is to support the interests and promote economic vitality of our members. Those are businesses, and that's great. And I'm glad we all love what they're doing. But the point is that this money is community funding. And your own statement says that this money is for social services, for educational, recreational, and cultural programs. That's what it says. And that is not what you're doing here. Instead, you're violating your own stated goals. You shouldn't be paying a consultant. It is not good fiscal management for a city to be paying a consultant who has two masters, the master of their own board and you, as we could see tonight. I mean, I was an advocate for many years, which is what the chamber director should be, an advocate to the city, not a supplicant to the city, in which of course he has to be if he's getting city money. It's fine to give some money for the Christmas lights. I love the Christmas lights, we all do. It's fine to give the chamber targeted grants, but $102,000, can we think of better ways to spend that money? If you don't want to spend it for community funding, how about giving some help to the community development department? I'll tell you what city businesses want, I think, from giving some help to them. They want a better interface with the city. They want a smoother permitting process. How about our ordinances written in plain English, and reviews of our ordinances and help with getting these permits? That's what they want. This money is not helping make that happen. I'm not addressing the performance or the report. I think it does not have measurable outcomes in it. And I think that instead, we should turn this over to our able city manager give him this money to spend in the best way for the city and its purposes, and not be giving it to a chamber. You won't be able to find, you will search hard to find a city, country that does this, certainly not at this level. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin.
No more speakers have raised their hands.
Okay, thank you. Let's bring it back for discussion. Randy?
So, you know, every now and then Robin and I are at odds on some of her comments and some of my comments, but I have a tendency to agree with her a little bit on this. First of all, I don't want to imply that Jamie or the chamber has done anything wrong or anything bad. I think personally, when you read this report, they've done an outstanding job, but I also see some crossover. I also see some moments that we should be, staff should be interacting and be in a bigger part of the mission. Broadband, I think, is one of them. I think Jamie has done an incredible job getting us to this point, but sooner or later, someone from our staff is going to have to be a part of that discussion, and a lot of that discussion is going to have to be brought back to council for even deeper, a deeper dive into it. So I know we just hired a new staff person, and James, help me with
our events and public information.
Yeah, I think I'm drawing a blank.
Robin Godfrey. Yeah.
Godfrey.
Mhm.
Robin. I'm hoping that you and Robin and Jamie sit down together and review this report and actually take a look at the things that we can be doing in-house now that we have Robin. That's where I agree with Robin Gerber, is there are things that we should be doing, and also prioritizing the things that we have Jamie do and have them come back along with the 2 areas that the mayor talked about in 3 months, and let's have this discussion again. Robin Gerber makes good points. The mayor made great points about the 2 priorities, and that we should have more information passed on to us on a regular basis. That's in my notes. And all in all, I just can't, again, if you just look at the product and you look at what Jamie's done, you know, you can't say enough for them. But there is some crossover here. And I agree that we need to take a long, hard look at that. And I think that when we gave them this funding this year, that was part of the discussion, is that we do come back in a timely manner, and we do talk about progress, and we do talk about things that we might be doing in conjunction with the chamber. So that's it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. All right. Do we need a motion here?
No, it's just receive and provide feedback, so no motion is required.
All right. Well, thank you once again to the museum, and thank you to Jamie, and thank you council members for providing feedback, and looking forward to receiving that in a few months. Okay, we're good to move on to number 4? Anybody need a break? Okay, let's just keep going. All right, number 4. Drown Avenue improvement feasibility. The city council will receive a report for Drown Avenue improvements and provide staff with direction.
Yes, thank you. And I have a few slides that I'll work through. We provided a report on some potential improvement options on Drown Avenue. Drown Avenue has been an area that was discussed several times over the last couple of years, stemming from some questions about from residents about potential or concerns related to speeding. And so as we've kind of talked about different improvements and things stemming from those concerns, we had the most recent conversation had resulted in council asking for an analysis of options to install sidewalks, curbs, and gutters. And so I think with the idea being that it would help kind of provide some engineering that would help result in people driving a little more carefully and people having access to the sidewalks. And so we've had a few of those discussions leading to this item, which is essentially the staff report provides an estimate for what the costs of adding sidewalks, curbs, and gutters to Drown Avenue would be. So let me pull this up quickly. That's not going to work. All right. Give me 1 second. There we go. And so the report provides an analysis of the full Drown Avenue, the full street. There are several sections of the street that already have improvements, but the report is intended to provide an overview of the full street. And so the item notes that a analysis from our engineering firm, Stantec, to look at to do a feasibility study for the sidewalks, curbs, and gutters would cost about $9,640. The Stantec has provided a rough estimate of what the actual improvements would likely cost. That number would be refined as part of the study, but just to give an idea, before we make any of those commitments, their rough estimate is that adding sidewalk, curb, and gutter to the entirety of Drown Avenue would cost about $1.8 million. We noted in the report, and it's worth repeating, that our street paving budget this year is anticipated to be $1.25 million. So that is in excess of our normal street paving budget. And it's not something that we currently have budgeted. It's not included in the budget at this point, but we are, as we discussed earlier, preparing for the next budget cycle. So if we were to do the study, we could identify certain areas and certain improvements that we would include in next year's budget and potentially future year budgets. We wanted to note, as we worked through this and we started to think about some other next step options, depending on which way some of these improvements go, there are some other options. One is that we've repaired and gotten the data tracker for one of our speed radar and monitoring signs. And so one thing we could do moving forward is place that speed radar and monitoring sign on Drown and collect data that we'd be able to report back to council on. We also, now that, as mentioned in the last item, we have our public information position. We can perform more public outreach and surveys to residents regarding what types of improvements the residents would like to see on Drown or even across the city. We can do more of those public outreach type options. And one reason why I mentioned that is, one of the questions that has come up about how we would pay for this type of improvement is the question of whether the city would look at potentially creating an assessment district. And so as part of an assessment district, if that conversation if there's interest in doing that, we would definitely plan to do a lot of public outreach and meet with the residents and get that feedback early on in that process. And so, and then finally, the next step that we identified is proceeding with the analysis via Stantec that would cost $9,640. So for the purposes of tonight's meeting, those are really the three questions of if we want to move forward with any of those next steps at this time. I'm just going to go through these very quickly. I won't belabor it, but throughout Drown, I think most of us are aware that there are sections that already have the sidewalks, curbs, and gutters, and then there's sections that have don't have it and would need some serious improvements to be able to get to that point. So we just showed a couple of these snapshots. This area on Drown, which the next few slides shows the northern edge of Drown, that have the existing sidewalks, curbs, sidewalks and curbs. So those sections are complete. And then once you get south of Pleasant, then it becomes more the area that I think we'd be looking at, where you can see here that there's no sidewalks or curbs And then in the right of way, there are obstacles that we would need to address to be able to put in sidewalks and curbs. And I'll go through these quickly, but you can see as you go south that most of the street is in that situation with hedges and trees and things like that in the right of way. And so, so that is just a quick overview. The report goes into more detail and explains the different configurations in different areas. But I don't think we need to get into that level of detail, although I'm happy to answer any questions. We do have several public comments that were submitted that I mentioned, or that Councilmember Francina asked me to note as she didn't get a chance to read them. We did receive, I believe, 4 written public comments that were opposed to sidewalks and curbs at this time. And then I do know we have some speakers as well, so I'm happy to answer any questions related to that. So.
Thank you, James. Souza, question?
James, on that slide that had this, the speed monitor, and then it says collect data.
Yeah.
When I hear collect data, I feel like the residents themselves are they have a wealth of observational data. I'm sorry. And whenever I've visited a friend on Upper Drown, I've seen the cars barreling down the street. Everywhere you look, there's signs begging people to slow down on both Upper and Lower Drown. There's a new sign that says 25 miles per hour, not 55. So it seems to me that there's already plenty of observational data verifying that the speeding has been happening for several years. So what I don't want to get, what I want, I mean, I guess I should, my question is what is the plan what is the purpose of collecting more data? What is the purpose?
It'd be just to provide it'd be just to provide that collected data back to council at a future meeting. If we don't have any official data on this at this point, we have, like you said, the observational data. So if the city council has enough observational data and wants to make a decision, that's an option. But from a staff perspective, I don't have any data to point at. So I think the idea with that speed radar sign would be collecting, let's say collecting 6 months of data and coming back to council with a firm report on what's actually been collected, by our speed radar. But it's an optional step. It's just, it's one option. So.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. We don't have to wait 6 months if we have some suggestions tonight for slowing traffic, because that's the immediate need. I mean, I think it's fine to collect the data, but not necessarily postpone 6 months. Thank you.
Correct. Although I will note that most people, we've had good response that, like for example, on Montgomery, that using the speed radar sign in itself is a speeding deterrent. So,
yes,
that was part of the idea with that. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if it's a speeding deterrent, then you're not getting a true picture, right?
Yeah. So there's both sides of that coin.
Yeah, but I think it's great that it's a deterrent. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's all I have right now. I have other
question,
later.
Bill?
Yes, Mr. Vega, the feasibility cost of $9,640 for the gutter, curb, and sidewalk option has 2 components. One is the more detailed cost assessment, and 2 is the determined extent of encroachments in the right-of-way and which encroachments would require removal. Is there any way of knowing how that 9640 divides in those two tasks?
No, we just we got the estimate to do the both together, so the estimate wasn't broken down between those two.
Thank you.
Randy, question?
And then Mayor, in that same line of questioning, James, have we thought about how we could break this project down into thirds, upper drown, middle drown, and lower drown? And then have is a Santec get back to us on their proposal as to how we could address each of those uniquely, or is it just better to have it all done at one time?
So as far as for the feasibility study, the cost is basically going to be the same cost regardless of if we do half the street or the full street. So the idea for us was for the feasibility study, that $9,640 that we would just get the whole street analyzed. And so for that purpose, I don't think it's worth breaking out, but I think the next step would be to break it out. When that feasibility report comes back, then if council were to say, okay, we're satisfied with north signal, let's focus on south, then we could look at only those improvements on south. Or I'm sorry, I said signal, I meant drown. But.
I've been there.
Yeah.
All right, thanks. All right, let's move on to public comment.
Anyone in the Zoom meeting who would like to speak, please use the hand raise function now. And we've got 4 people who've raised their hands. I'll bring Corinna Wright in first. Corinna, if you're there, you can go ahead and speak. If you're muted, please unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. I'm a resident of Drown Avenue, and I'm really happy that the council is looking at this issue of speeding on our street. It's sort of, as you have come to realize, a much more complicated situation than just speeding. We have no sidewalks, so we're walking in the streets, and that's where we run into the problems with people speeding. I am concerned as a taxpayer of this town that if we open this up for a feasibility study on Drown, won't they want one on Daly? Won't they want one on Mercer? I'm just concerned about how we're spending our money and how what the return on that is going to be. So I just want everyone to be very careful and thoughtful regarding this situation. I mean, very basically, Drown Avenue needs to be paved. I mean, we have potholes, you know, so this idea of, you know, figuring out the speeding just seems like one step beyond what we need to be doing. You know, we need a crosswalk at Grand Avenue and Drown so we can cross the street there. And I think if we had a crosswalk there without a feasibility study, people are going to have to slow down their traffic. And when they take the left onto Drown, they're going to be already in a slow situation. They're not going to, you know, gun it up. And I'd also like to point out that there are very few cars that go down Drown, whether they're speeding or not. And my husband and I are both very opposed to speed bumps. Having lived in neighborhoods with them, we don't think that they slow down traffic. So if you're going to look at all this, you know, issues, you have to include sidewalks, which is a bigger issue, or rumble strips or something. So maybe $10,000 is a small amount of money to pay to sort of get a bigger picture. I don't know, but I appreciate what you're doing. And I think you should look at a crosswalk at Grand and Drown and a rumble strip when you first turn on to Drown. That'll slow people down. More signage. We don't have any signage, slow children at play, nothing like that on Drown. Some very simple, low expense ideas might be implemented here and see how they go before spending $1 million or whatever it is to put in speed bumps that, as we all know, if you're going to speed, you're going to speed over speed bumps. Thank you.
Thank you, Corinna.
Next, we have Bill Miley. Mr. Miley, if you're there, you can go ahead and speak. There you go.
Hi. I'm going to pass on most of the things I was going to say, but I do think that a radar feedback instrument on both north and south would be really important to start with right away. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
And next we have Allie Dench. Allie, if you're there, you can go ahead and speak. If you're muted, please unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening. So I am a Drown Avenue resident, and as a mother of 2 young toddlers, I really appreciate these considerations. I am one of many families who have lived in the area and have moved to this neighborhood for the walkability, the proximity to other families, and I just really appreciate this being on the agenda and under consideration. I have had many experiences where I either have to jump off the road, even with a flashlight, in the evenings. I've also experienced some hostility when asking people to slow down. So I know that many people have many different feelings about this, but just this conversation is moving in the right direction. I really appreciate Sousa's question about additional data being gathered and sort of the intention behind that or the usefulness of that. I do love data and think that it can be really helpful, but I also wonder about ways that we might be able to pair that with actionable items now. And I don't know what that would look like, but one suggestion was looking at this in 3 parts based on geography, but I'm wondering if there are ways to chunk up these action items or these ideas into phases so that it might not all happen at one time, but that it might happen over time. And the other thing that I'm wondering is, the budget for paving is one budget line item for the city, but I'm wondering about public health and safety budgets or other pieces of Ojai's budget that we might be able to look at including this for, just because, public safety, walkability, these issues, it involves much more than just paving as a line item. So yeah, I appreciate your time and your thought, and those were some of my comments.
Thank you, Allie.
And next we have Cynthia K Alvinson. If you're there, Cynthia, you can go ahead and speak.
Okay, thank you. Hello. I too am very grateful that you are addressing the issue. I oftentimes sit out front and have my lunch and read my book in the middle of the day and keeping my eye out on the road and see who it is when I notice it's not usually the homeowners on the street. I pretty much know where every car parks that's speeding. I have my bike and I ride around and I know where they are. So it is a dangerous situation to say the least. And if public safety is our #1 priority, which obviously the last 2 years, we've seen some serious measures brought upon us in the name of public health. So if you really want to slow down and perhaps decrease the danger of the street and encourage a lot more of a neighborly vibe, which is already happening. There's families with young kids on the street more than I've seen. I've been here 12 years. If you want to directly impact tomorrow, Drown, Upper Drown, and Lower Drown's another situation. I have ideas for them too, because I'm concerned. But for Upper Drown, you put a barrier at the top of that street until you come to a conclusion of what you're going to do. Because every day you postpone some kind of solution is another day of risk. And I too have been yelled at and sped past. And in lieu of sidewalks, that would be, and anybody who lives up in the upper area, Upper Drown, has beautiful access to that area by Daly, which is much wider, already has sidewalks. You could put speed bumps on Daly to appease that neighborhood, but everybody up on that area would not be impacted by a barrier. They can easily access it from Daly and go the speed limit on Daly as well. So, you know, while you talk about it and delay and deliberate over the best possible solution and more data, frankly, we have plenty of data, like Sousa says. If you would have gone on a walk, maybe the whole city council take a walk from Lower Drown Ojai Avenue all the way to the top, we could have a wonderful discussion. I can pinpoint everything that I've seen over the last 12 years. That's raw data. Before you go spending $10,000 of our taxpayer money, you should be opportunistic enough to see that you have a wealth of resources here from the residents that live here. And I'm not against sidewalks, but it's a huge budget and it's unnecessary in the short term. In the short term, we can put a barrier and make this a really wonderful loop. More residents will be walking up, and I bet you they would never even want to lose that barrier after they've enjoyed the safety of strolling in the afternoon. That's what this street is turning into. I've witnessed it myself.
Thank you, Cynthia. Much appreciated. Any more comments, Gail?
Next, we have Larry Steingold. Mr. Steingold, if you're there, you can go ahead and speak. There you go.
Thank you. I live at 601 Pleasant on the corner of North Drowned. I bike Drown almost every day, all the way and up and back. It does need paving. I don't think sidewalks, I don't know. I don't live on Drown, so sidewalks are something that I have a sidewalk. So I don't have any dog in the fight there. But I think putting a stop sign in the middle of Drown will slow everything down. Yeah, in the middle of North Drown, just throw up a stop sign. I mean, what we used to do back somewhere else is we used to put cars in the road, and that slowed everybody down because it became a slalom run. And after a while, people learned. But that's, I mean, speeding, unless you start writing lots of tickets and making that money come to the city instead of the county, then maybe there'll be some incentive. But right now, the cop has to watch everywhere. There's only 3 of them in the city. They can't be everywhere. You don't have a citizens patrol. You can't have radar guns with cameras. So put a stop sign in the middle of the street. That'll stop people. It'll slow them down. Nobody likes running stop signs, especially if neighbors and cops are there. We're taking photographs. Anyway, so that's what I would suggest. Keep it simple, pave the road, slow everybody down. And Cindy, I mean, if you could close the street, they would have to own it. You can't. That's fire marshal. That's got other issues. But that, I mean, it is an issue. It's got to be paved. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
And that's the last person.
Okay, thank you so much, Gail. Much appreciated. We'll move to discussion. So on most items, I speak last. Tonight, I'll speak first. I regularly travel Drown Avenue by foot, bike, and car. I'm very familiar with the circumstances surrounding this road. First and foremost, there's a valid concern about safety on Drown Avenue. So here's what I would like to recommend to staff as far as next steps. First, as James said, install interactive speed signs and gather data for a month. Start with a month. These signs flash when one travels over the speed limit. Doing so will achieve 2 goals. They remind people who travel too fast to slow down, and they gather data on how many drivers are traveling at unsafe speeds and at what time of day. This is the part of the puzzle that I'm most interested in, as it helps us understand the scope of the problem. And then second, Ojai's pavement management plan will be coming up to us this spring, very soon. And at that time, we want to make sure that Drown Avenue is given due priority. Thank you. Susan?
So this is the time for comments, correct? Okay, so I want to start by saying of what the issue of speeding is, of course, a citywide problem. Every street has a growing number of signs that say, you know, drive as if your kids live here. And I would start by making a list of simple, less expensive things that we can do that would help to immediately slow down the speed limit. First of all, as most of you know, I've advocated for years for a 25 mile per hour speed limit because that sets the tone. Drivers that are going 30 miles per hour on Grand have a tendency to continue in that mode. You know, to me, the 30 mile per hour signs on Grand, Foothill, North Signal, those are outdated with the level of traffic that we have and the level of a growing number of people walking and pedestrians. That speed limit is outdated. I also looked I like the idea of a crosswalk at Grand and Drown. I think we should look at that intersection. Today, I don't live near Drown, so I spent extra time today going back and forth at different times of the day. And at 4 o'clock, I drove very slowly up from Ojai Avenue, from Lower Drown to Grand. And as soon as I got to that corner, it was like a freeway. No child could safely go visit a friend on the upper portion of Drown. Okay, something needs to be done at that intersection. I don't know what, but I think that's a very valid point. And it's an awkward situation because you've got a zigzag situation. The other obvious thing is the signage. The 25 mile per hour sign from Ojai Avenue to Lower Drown at the Waite corner is practically falling down. It looks like a car hit it or something. So I think we should have signage. Perhaps the street can be signed. Perhaps there should be 25 miles per hour on the street itself. But the speed limit needs to be crystal clear with, one of those, they have really great signs now that says share the road. It's got kids, horses, bikes. It makes it clear that this is a rural, family-oriented street. You know, we need that, okay, to remind people. Let's see. Oh, on the issue of sidewalks, Upper Drown is so, when there's no traffic, it's almost like walking out in nature. It's almost like a wide trail. It is such a beautiful street with the view of the mountains. And my sense is that people really want to keep the rural feeling, but they also want safety. So I think the other issue is, can we look at limiting parking on the street? The parking does narrow the street and visually tends to slow down traffic, but evidently it hasn't worked because there's plenty of cars cluttering up Lower Drown and people are still speeding. But perhaps cars could go on one, there has to be something that can be done. And I went into I looked all over for my Complete Streets booklet because I think those streets are addressed. The 2017 plan we adopted, there must be suggestions for that part of the city, from the consultants. I think we need to look at that. Yeah, I like that. I think we should consider the idea that Larry Steingold brought up about a stop sign, but that's kind of weird because you don't normally put a stop sign on Upper Drown because there's no cross streets. Ideally, we would have a public meeting that's just devoted to this valley, citywide. That's what I'd really like to see, so that we can, find out how people would feel about having a 25 mile per hour per mile per hour, a speed limit that is citywide, so that it would set the tone. People would adjust and they would be in that 25 mile per hour mode rather than, when it's 30, it tends to be 35 or 40. And the cars were just barreling down Grand Avenue at around 4 o'clock, and those, like I said at the beginning, they turn and they keep on going. And that's all I have right now. But yes, I hope we can fix the signs at the entrance, and at both entrance and exits to Upper and Lower Drown so that it's crystal clear what the speed limit is.
Randy?
Susan, are you done?
Yes, for now I'm done. Thank you. Thank you for listening to my part in this. Thank you.
So, I moved here either 28 or 29 years ago. And one of the things that we were looking for when we moved to Ojai, and we looked all over Ojai, and that was a community that had a lot of children in it, that was close to schools, and that just presented the pure beauty of this community. When we moved here, Pleasant Avenue was street lined with liquid ambers and magnolia grandifloras.
Yeah.
The city came in our second year when we moved here, cut down 14 trees. And we bought specifically on Pleasant because it was a tree-lined street, because we had sidewalks and we had curb and gutters, and it was quiet. So I've been up and down this neighborhood. I've watched this neighborhood grow. I've watched it transition. I watched it transition from when we moved in and all the children to the transition of all the children growing up leaving. And then for me, my son and his wife and my grandchildren have moved home. But we had a long period where we had no children. And now there is an abundance
there's children.
of children in our community again. So it's just part of that life cycle. And so this street has just been neglected for I don't know how many years. It hasn't changed. I can tell you right now, it hasn't changed at 1 ounce in all the years that I've been here. It has not changed. And I think I'd be pretty close to say, I don't even think it's ever been paved. I mean, it is just a rundown. I don't know, I'm going to clean up my thought process on it, but it's just a horrible street. So I did some quick math here, because I like doing that just for the heck of it. And well, first let's start here. This proposed kind of budget is based on doing Drown from Ojai Avenue all the way up to what's the top street, Mayor?
Red Hill.
Yeah, Red Hill. So I mean, that's a long thing. I personally think that's why I said to me, there's three distinct areas of Drown. There's Pleasant North, Pleasant South, and then there's Ground, then there's Grand, and then there's South Grand or South Drown. And if you look at the reports, the street with the most neglect is the one in the middle. So that's where I would put my focus on. That's why I asked about the study. Is it better? Can we save some money if we did less studying and more studying in specific areas? So I think that should be something you might ask, James. $10,000 for the study that we're getting, I don't think is that big a deal. But if it was $7,500, I think we'd all be happier. The second thing is I did the math on this, and I'm kind of in agreement. I'm not necessarily sure we need sidewalks, but I do think we need curbs. I do believe we need curbs. I do believe that we need aprons, clean lines of entrance and exits out of these properties, and that we definitely need the street completely taken down. It's got a humongous crown in it, and it needs to be completely we have on here, it's called mill and overlay. It's going to need more than a mill and an overlay. It's going to need an actual complete removal and actually regrade and then new asphalt. So my numbers come in at roughly 179,000 if we did what I just said. If we looked at curbs, we looked at aprons, we looked at repurposing, removing and replacing the existing asphalt. And I even threw in a budget of $20,000 to put humps in, not speed bumps. There's a distinct difference, between them. That's where I see us going. And I would sure like to see something come back in those lines, looking at that section of Drown. And then as far as data, I understand what everyone was talking about regarding too much and why, but I understand why we need it. But more importantly is, Sousa said it, I believe the mayor said it, I'm sure Councilman Wyrick Councilman Blatch are going to say it. But, you know, we've got a community on that street that have been there a long time. And I think one of the things we need to do is obviously talk to them directly and get their opinion as to what they would like to see done. We may not be able to please all 40 residents, but I bet you we could develop a consensus. The other thing is so do that, interact and gather some more information from the people that actually live on the street. I agree with Souza. I think, and I agree with James. I think that we could do something immediately regarding putting some something that says do not speed. Souza, by the way, that street is 25 miles an hour because of its closeness to the Topa Elementary. So so it is 25. It just needs to be posted more. The other things is I agree, we do need better crosswalks, but we need better crosswalks all throughout the city. So that's a no-brainer. That's something that just has to come up in our budget for the street overlay this year. I'm probably talking in circles, but I think that there's just a lot that needs to be done there. I think it needs to be done. I think if we dial it in, that we could look at funding it this year. I had thought originally that it was going to be a larger number. I thought it was going to be maybe $500,000 to $600,000. Hard to say, but I think with some of the money that we already have set aside for overlays, I think we could look at Measure C money. I think that we could look at all of our funding mechanisms and actually say to ourselves, is getting this street done and getting it done safely so that we provide that neighborhood with a safe environment for all the parents, all the children, all the grandparents, and all the visitors that the mayor and I and the neighborhood see. I think we can do it.
Mayor, I no longer see my picture. Do you see me?
No, we don't see you.
Yeah. Can I ask Randy a question? Because I didn't know what he meant by, I wanted to know what he meant by middle drown. And also I wanted to say, Randy, I know that the speed limit is 25. I was talking about the speed limit on Grand being 30 kind of sets the tone. And I felt if we could put 25 at Grand, especially that section of Grand, that might help. That I just want to clarify that. But what is the middle part?
Mayor, may I quickly respond?
Yeah, sure.
The mayor lives north of Pleasant Avenue and Drown. And so that's a cutoff point, Pleasant Avenue and above it. And then between Pleasant Avenue and Grand is the largest section of Drown. And that has the most adverse conditions. And then there's the south side of Drown, which is Grand down to the 150. And if you look at the pictures that were presented to us, you'll see that the upper and the lower already have curb and gutter and sidewalk. Upper does, lower, not as much. But for some, again, I'm not gonna, I hope
Okay,
that,
so,
I hope you.
so by middle, you're talking about the first section of Upper Drown.
From Grand to Pleasant.
From Grand to Pleasant. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Thanks, Souza. Thank you, Randy. Bill?
Yeah, a lot of good suggestions. Mayor, I liked your idea of the, and others have mentioned, the interactive speed signs to be done immediately. That could also, be a little more aggressive in terms of reminding people what the speed limit is, as well as collecting data. So I like that idea, updating the signs to make sure everybody knows it's 25 miles an hour. I really think the crosswalk issue is important because that would slow, that would be traffic calming on Grand too, as well as a safer crossing. I really think that's something that should be a priority and looked at in terms of the kind of design that would accomplish that. And on the curb and gutter and sidewalk thing, boy, there seems to be a sharp difference of opinion among the residents on the safety component of sidewalks. I thought the idea was to have a place where the children could walk separated from traffic by a curb and our parked cars. And so I guess, Randy, you mentioned that. there's a sharp difference of opinion here, and this is also why I wanted to have a listing done, and it's included in the feasibility study of where the encroachments are, because I think a survey of property owners needs to be informed by what encroachments need to be removed to put sidewalks in, to really get a good take from the neighbors, from the property owners, as to whether they want to go forward with that. So I just want to mention that. I think that's an open question that we could probably get some more information of by having a list of the encroachments that would have to go away in order to put that in. So I'm in favor of pretty much everybody, the suggestions they've made. I like the interactive speed signs, and I really like this idea of really thinking about that crosswalk is important.
Thank you, Bill. Randy?
Mayor, just to respond to Bill real quick, the sidewalks to me are that's why I said curb to curb, there are a multitude of encroachments from the curb line towards that 5 feet, which is the public right of way.
I know.
And instead of getting into a dispute with every neighbor out there, again, in the survey, you could ask them, but I think more importantly, to establish a clear line of curb and gutter so that we could do the proper infill and the proper grading and do the proper approaches to these homeowners' homes. You kind of have to do that. You can come back down the road and do sidewalks if people choose to do that. I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah, we're saying the same thing. I'm just saying, let's have an informed survey if we're going to be.
I think one of the things, if anyone just wants to go out there and look, if you take a look at your telephone poles, they're all in a linear line on each side of Drown. And if you use that as your 6 inches in front of those as your curb line, that'll kind of give you an idea of where your personal encroachments are on your property. So just go telephone to telephone and just string a line. It's real easy to do.
Yeah.
But you're going to see that will help you to determine if you have anything personally that you need to consider if we come around and ask you for what your concerns are or what your needs are.
I just think that ought to be part of a survey if we're going to do that.
Bring it back to the chair, Bill. Thanks. Raise your hand. Thanks. And just as we are hearing and reading, people are very divided on whether they want a sidewalk or not. So back to James's suggestion about getting more information and having more, and Susan's also getting more community input, because some people don't want sidewalks. They like the rural feel of our town, and they like the country eclectic nature of it. And if you think Shady Lane, Blanche, Ventura, Kenyatta, Summer, Lyon, Grand Avenue, the entire Arbolada have no sidewalks, and some people like that. And if you think in terms of the obstructions, trees, bushes, fences, decorative boulders, there's a lot happening there. So just as we move forward, making sure that we really survey the folks on that section in particular is important.
Mayor,
hold on, Randy raised his hand, but I can't see it, Susan,
but
sorry.
you can't see me, right?
Okay,
I just want to, after Ryan, I want to talk about the sidewalks.
Okay.
I'm just butting in because you can't see me.
I know, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Randy.
So just quickly on sidewalks, again, that's why I've kind of left them to me as a gray area. Personally, I like them. And I like them when they're level and they're flat and they don't cause trip and falls. But there's another venue if we decide to go with some form of sidewalk, and that's decomposed granite. So again, it's permeable. There's a lot of benefits. There's a lot of different types of sidewalks. That's why I said there's no reason to get into an argument or a deep dive on sidewalks right now. But establishing clear lines of delineation and allowing clean, clear lines of egress into people's property and out, and giving level surfaces for people to walk are the most critical things we're talking about.
Thank you. Susan?
Oh, does Ryan want to speak? Hello?
Not, his hand's not up. Oh,
Okay.
His hand was up and he's muted,
Well,
Mayor.
so I was just going to
Souza?
say, I was going to say pretty much what Randy said. When we ask on the survey about sidewalks, let's make clear that there are sidewalks that blend in with rural character, because a lot of people just think of cement, but they can be more like what we have on Kuyama, for example.
thank you, Susan. Ryan, did you want to say something? You're muted, sorry.
Thanks. The one thing that's definitely true about those streets is that they're super narrow, and I mean, it's a tough call. I do think we need to make sure we get everybody, because I mean, I don't drive down Drown, and I don't ride my bike down Drown, and I don't even walk down it. It is uncomfortably narrow. If we had sidewalks that encroached at all, that may be a problem, and it may be not the way people want it. I mean, it's already clearly a traffic calming element that we've tried for having cars parked in between that and where people potentially, you know, would normally be walking. But they, you know, some of the streets in Ojai are complex. They don't line up. They're not all the same width. Some have sidewalks, some don't. I don't know whether that's our unique charm or somebody was, you know, getting a little heat exhaustion in the afternoon when they were designing the place. I know Steve McClary told me once, way a long time ago, that the reason why like Montgomery and a few other streets don't line up is they would measure them out with ropes in the morning, and by the afternoon it was so hot the ropes had expanded so much that they got everything screwed up when they laid the lines. I don't know if that's true, but I always thought it was kind of funny. But I definitely think we got to get a consensus of the neighborhood. Plus, it's not cheap. I mean, the numbers we put out are $40 a month per household for a long time. It's not no money. I think it was like $480 a year, around that, to do some of the stuff we wanted to do, and we've obviously gotten some public feedback on that. The only other thing I'll add is I wasn't even sure if we were in discussion or not, but there were 2 hands up in the public. I want to make sure you're aware of that, Mayor.
2 hands up. Where?
From the panelists.
I saw those
Actually, from the attendees.
Yeah,
We
2
already
attendees
closed
raised
that-
their
we already
hands.
closed that, didn't we?
We already took public comment. So for those people watching, you know, we don't get into the back and forth. It's one public comment.
Well, what should I do if you can't see me? I'm not sure what to do, Mayor Betsy.
Just say my hand is raised and I'll hear.
Okay, my hand is raised.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay,
Susan.
so when you do this survey, I think we have to distinguish between lower and upper, because upper Drown is very, very wide. At least parts of it are quite wide compared to lower Drown, which is, I don't, it says host asked you to start your video, but I never touched anything. What do I, okay.
We see you now.
Okay, I must have accidentally brushed something. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay, remember this is my first time on this computer. Yeah, okay, yeah, that was my only comment about the difference between upper and lower Drown. I mean, am I correct? Is it just an optical illusion, or upper Drown is wider, correct?
Yeah, there's sections that are 22 feet wide paved street, and there's sections that are 36 wide. So there's a big variance from one section of Drown to another for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Randy?
I was just going to clarify that we have a diagram actually showing the street widths, and the Grand Avenue down is all pretty uniform, 34, 33, 34, 36. It's the middle Drown between Pleasant and Grand that's 36 at the top, 22 somewhere in the middle, 34 near the bottom. Well, I don't know what they were measuring, but if I measure telephone to telephone, it's going to give me the best, the easiest reference point and the easiest way to make determinations as to how wide my street is.
Thank you.
I have one more question.
Go ahead, Susan.
James, to reconsider the speed limit on Grand, which I'm probably going to ask for until it happens, do we need that as a separate item? Do we need to take a survey with the residents?
Yeah, I would suggest it as a separate item. I know Matt can opine on the legality of it, but I think right now the way it's noticed, you know, the public wouldn't necessarily know that it's an opportunity to come comment on a speed limit change to Grand. So I think if that were gonna, if we were considering that, that would come as a separate item.
Absolutely. Tonight's item was noticed as a discussion of Drown, not
yeah.
Grand. Obviously,
Yeah.
they're connected, but we would have to have that as an item. But that could be a request at the end of this item as a future agenda item to have a discussion on Grand.
Yeah, because it seems like if we're going to look at that intersection,
Mhm.
it makes sense to reconsider the speed limit, you know, and because it is a route to school for all the reasons, you know, there's Grand is like a major route to school and to Sarzodi Park. So I would, at the end of the meeting, I'll make a request. Thank you.
Randy?
Yeah, I was just gonna help Councilman Francina along with, this is not agendized, the speed limit. And as much as I think it's something that should be done, it's just not, to me, it's just not appropriate to be involved with this discussion about Drown. The other thing though, again, about posting speed limits, I think there's some short-term things. Were we going to right now give staff some direction? Because this is just a discussion item. There's no motion needed, but how would you like to do that, Mayor?
Well, first I'm going to take Bill's comment and then let's come to some consensus. Is that okay? Bill?
I was thinking along the same lines. I was going to suggest that we provide direction for to go forward with the feasibility study, include the mayor's suggestions for interactive speed signs, and also direction for coming up with a traffic calming crosswalk at Grand and Drown.
Okay, sounds good. Anybody else like to add to that?
Yes, can we add, I think James already took notes, but to clarify the speed limit, to, you know, that the signage is crystal clear at the beginning of Drown, you know, the beginning and end. And then we're going to do and then there's going to be, the survey is a given, right? Or is that what you mean by feasibility study?
That's how it's described in the staff report as a feasibility study.
Okay.
Well, there are two different things. So there's a feasibility study, which is our engineer, you know, our contract engineer putting together a report. And then I think Councilmember Francina, you were saying, I think what you were getting at was the idea of doing some sort of like community survey to get feedback on what people want to see, correct?
Yeah, and then have a live meeting where we can really discuss it. If necessary, that would be even a special meeting, because this is so important to my way of thinking. It's super important.
Randy?
Yeah, again, I don't, I think Susan's heart's in the right place. I just think if we start having special meetings for every city, for every street in Ojai, we're going to have 365 meetings a year on streets. Aside from that, I think the data collection is important. I think, James, if we're going to do that you might set up your own criteria sheet before heading out and then have something that allows you to add things that maybe we hadn't thought about. But that way we're not taking a lot of time of each of these individuals, and on the same token, they're not taking a lot of time with the surveyors, so that we can get this back to us in 30 days.
Great. All right, thank you. All right, well, we've given staff direction. Anybody, any final comments before we move on?
You know, so I did hear one thing at the end I just wanted to get clarity on. I heard 30 days, but we would collect data and then need time to put that all together and come back to council. So I just want to make sure it would take us longer than 30 days. So I just want to make sure that that is clear.
Of course, James.
Yeah.
Of course, we know you're super busy. So thank you. Randy?
Yeah, all I'm trying to say is that whether it's 30 or 60, I'll obviously leave that up to James, but more importantly is we're going to be heading into budget season in March.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're going to be, again, we heard the community's concerns about let's not take 5 years to get this done. But we also recognize it's not going to get done in 5 days. So we just need to do this expeditiously. And And we need to think about the short-term goals that we can achieve, and then the mid-range, and then what the package is going to look like.
Okay, so how about bringing back as part of the budget process? Because that's still a pretty, that's a, you know, basically between 1 to 2 months, basically.
So you want the last meeting in March? First meeting in April?
Well, how about if we bring it back with the capital improvement projects, which might be that first meeting in April. But if that way, if it moves around, it comes back with the CIP, which is when we need to make those decisions. So.
Okay, Souza?
So just so I'm clear, James, we don't need to do the simple things like checking on the signs. That's not dependent on the data collection. That's something you could go out.
Right. Right, that's something we'll just look into. I know I had asked for where the signs were, and we do have 25-mile-per-hour signs on the 700 block, 900 block, and 1300 block, but I'll ask them to look to check, which should cover both, well, kind of the main entries, but I'll have them check them and make sure that they are signed appropriately. So.
Yeah, especially the one coming from Ojai Avenue by weight. It's just kind of tilted and you hardly notice it.
Okay.
So,
Bill?
Yeah, and James, you know, my suggestion, I think everyone went along with it, is the mayor's suggestion for the interactive speed signs. We look into that.
Yeah, we'll get those out with the speed limit sign on that as well. So.
That'd be great. Thank you. Randy, your hands up.
My final thought, Mayor, thank you, is you know, James, as we proceed with the short-term goals, I think it'd be great if you give us an email blast and we also post it so that the community knows that we heard them and that we're moving in the right direction.
Got it.
Sounds good. Yes. Thank you. We are moving in the right direction. Much appreciated, everybody. Let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back for item number 5. Thank you.
James, I went to intermission. I was looking for some popcorn.
Popcorn sounds good right now, actually.
Yeah, I hear you. Great discussions tonight. Really good discussions.
Yes, I agree. How about them Bengals?
Hey, I picked them to beat. I wanted them because I want the Rams to beat the heck out of them. So yeah, how about them Bengals or Bengals?
It's our time.
No, you live in California now. Regroup, repurpose.
My hometown.
Rethink.
Who doesn't love an underdog?
Yeah. Yeah, they've come a long way. I was thinking of their quarterback today. I think he's 24 or 25 years old, but he is exceptional.
LSU guy.
Yeah. I think we got too many weapons for him, but it's going to be a good game.
We'll see. Okay, are we ready?
Mayor, am I sensing a bet taking place here? Tangerines or
it's got to be Pixies.
Okay, all right, we are back. Hi, everybody. We'll move on to number 5, the mid-year budget review of the city's fiscal year 2021-2022. So we'll receive a review and approve receipt of the COVID assistance. And I just want to say a big heartfelt thank you to James and to Pam and to staff for navigating this period, because we know it hasn't been easy and you've done a stellar job. So thank you, James.
Thank you. And I have a few slides here with a few numbers. We didn't get too deep into the numbers, but we do want to go through a little bit because we had committed, Pam and I had committed to the budget committee and then also to the city council last year that we knew that the budgets were going to be very volatile and that we would have periods where revenues dropped drastically and then we had to reduce expenditures, and there'd be periods where things got better and then we'd be able to get moving again on projects and things. And so we committed that we would plan to do more regular budget reviews than maybe had happened in the past. And so ironically, things have smoothed out a little bit. I think we've seen over the last 6 months, things have kind of returned more to a normal level, not quite normal, but closer to normal. But we still wanted to make that commitment of coming back and updating the city council and the public, because there were times last year where the budget got very tight and very interesting. I'll probably say this a few times in the presentation. We went from having $3.5 million in the bank to being down to $700,000 in the bank at our lowest point, which, for a normal household budget, that sounds like a lot of money, but that's essentially less than 1 month of paying our bills for the city. So, it'd be equivalent to being down to your last couple of paychecks at home. So we're in a much better spot now, but when the shutdown really hit, that was the impact that we saw. And so I'll work through a couple slides here with just high level information. We won't get super into the numbers, but just to kind of reiterate, we budget the city's budget on the July to June fiscal year. So every July we adopt our budget basically June 30th, and then we have our new budget for the year. And so as you can see on this chart, kind of where we're at this point, we adopted our budget in July. We closed out. We did the year-end review around that time. And then from October to December, we've been performing the audits, which this year we had more audits than we've ever had. And we actually, because of some grants that we got, we're actually going to have another audit called the single audit that is applicable when a city obtains a certain level of grant funding. So the budget and finance team has been heavily into audits for the last 4 months and has another one coming up. But we just closed out the major audit last council meeting. Actually, we reported that back to council. And so we are now at the point of kind of stopping and doing our mid-year review and looking at how close we are to our adopted budget. And so it's an important step because of not only the volatility and making sure everybody understands where we've ended up, but also in making those decisions like the one we just did on Drown, looking at getting our next budget ready over the next couple of months to adopt a new budget by June 30th. So we're squarely in the middle of this process. And so I'm gonna keep it like fairly simple. What we did was we looked at our revenues, the money coming in, and our expenses, the money going out. And we looked at the adopted budget and where we're actually at. And if we're over 50%, then that means that for revenues, that means more money is, we're on pace to have more money come in than we expected. If we're under 50%, it means that we're underperforming what we expected. And so it should give us a fairly, quick snapshot look at, where we're at and if we're hitting our budget estimates. And so the good news is for revenues, we are at 52% at this point, and we're probably actually going to be a little bit better than that. If you average this out, we're at 6 months, then the logical conclusion would be, oh, we're going to hit 104% of our revenues. I think we'll actually do a little bit better than that because the big category here that's underperforming, those payments that's underperforming only because of the timing. So I think over the next month, that'll kind of come back strong. And so even that category that's very weak right now, the revenue from other agencies will be much higher. So I think we're going to overperform. I think we all probably thought we would overperform this year, that we'd have more revenues coming in, because we did budget very conservatively because we weren't sure if there would be any more shutdowns or any more impacts from COVID back when we adopted the budget. So I think we knew we budgeted conservatively. We hoped that it would be better than what we were budgeting. And I think that is playing out. But I will say, at this point, we're still estimating our revenues will come in probably a little under $11 million at this point. That is still far below where they would normally be had COVID not happened. I think our best estimate of where we'd be without COVID would have been between 12 to $14 million over the last couple of years. So it's better than we were at our worst when we were down into the $8 million range, but we're still not going to be back to where we are. But we're at a point where we're able to live within our means, which is good. And so for revenues, we're over 50%, which is good. For expenditures, we did the same thing, and we're under 50%, which is good. It means that we budgeted conservatively with our expenditures, and we've been able to keep our belts tight and still spend less than even we were budgeting conservatively. And so, I should have, let me get into a little bit more. Well, actually, I'll get into a little more detail on that in a minute. So for expenses, for the main expenses of for utilities and repairs, those were right on track. And utilities, we don't have much control over. We try to conserve energy and things like that, but there's not a whole lot we can do to reduce those. So the way we've been able to keep our budget tight is we still have been managing our vacancies very closely. And we've still been managing our contracts pretty closely as well. Although we're starting to loosen up on those now that the revenues are coming back. We're starting to fill a couple of the key positions that we went without for a year or two. And we're starting to use some of the some contractors that we had held off on using previously. And so, and that's reflected. We've had some major projects lately with tree trimming and some projects related to items like that we've been able to get moving on pretty quickly as soon as the revenues started to return to normal levels. And so we're under budget right now, which is good. So it means the revenues have come in a little stronger than we had budgeted for, and then our expenses are coming in at a little lower than we had budgeted for. So that's a pretty good combination. I wanted to note quickly that tax revenues, we call them our big three categories. We have property tax, sales tax, and transient occupancy tax, which is the hotel tax for anybody not familiar with that. The property tax has continued to increase slightly over the last few years, which makes sense when you think about it. I think most people have realized that house prices are going up. And so the property tax reflects that. Sales tax is flat and has been flat over the last couple of years. And so I think that also is not a surprise, but it kind of confirms that what we all suspect right now with the pandemic, which is it's impacting our local stores. And so, you know, with inflation and everything, you'd hope that that sales tax would be going up, but they're pretty flat right now, which again, just confirms that our local stores are being hit by the pandemic. And so, but transient occupancy tax, which is the slide showing here, the hotel tax, has been the most volatile and the one it's our biggest single tax, but it's also kind of the hardest to project right now, because as a reminder, at one point when hotels were shut down for a period, we had a couple of months where we only received a couple of $1,000s. I think we had 1 month that was $6,000 in revenue, whereas we normally would receive, you know, almost $400,000 a month in hotel tax. So that number's gone down, as you can see, in some of the years, and it's starting to normalize. 2018 to 2019 was the last year pre-COVID. So that's kind of our baseline, what a normal year looks like. We had received $3.71 million in hotel tax. In 2019 to 20, when the shutdowns and some of the other measures hit, we dropped to under $3 million. So we almost lost $1 million there. And then in 2020 to 21, there was still that, it's hard to remember now, but there was still a period of time in that year where there was a briefer shutdown, and where some of the hotels shut down with some of the impacts from COVID. And so the numbers went up from the worst year, but we're still down from 3.71 to 3.46. So we were still not at our normal level. And so what we're seeing this year is right now we're projected to hit 3.8 million. I think a lot of people, I've heard from a lot of people that the perception right now is that the hotels are booming and they're really doing great business. I think we're seeing that they're returning to normal levels, but I was surprised that that number was not higher, especially considering how much, you know, anybody who's booked a hotel room lately knows that the room rates have been increasing, and I actually expected that to increase more. So I still am being very cautious and telling people that I don't think we've hit normal yet. We're getting closer to normal, but not, I don't think, I think between sales tax and hotel tax, we see that we're still not kind of pre-pandemic levels. So, you know, it's, and this chart kind of summarizes this, but it's getting better, but we're not quite where we normally would be. And so, so what does this really mean? It means that our budget's returning to a more normal level. It means that we are able to continue work on some key projects that had been paused when the budget crunched for the first 2 years of the pandemic. Even saying that out loud is strange because we're about to enter our third year of the pandemic in March. You know, March, what is it? March 13th, we enter year 3. And so we've seen a couple years of severe impact, and but we're hoping that this third year keeps returning more and more to normal. And so one of the key things that we are looking at is the reserve. I mentioned at the beginning of this item that we started the pandemic with we had a very good reserve, very cautious, because we knew that we were prone to anything that would impact tourism is going to impact the city budget essentially. And so we had about $3.4 million or 34% in reserve when the pandemic hit. That dropped to $700,000 at our lowest point, or 7% in reserves. Just as a reminder, the 50% reserve, kind of the basic summary of that is, by having 50% in reserve in a complete shutdown situation, 50% would give us about 6 months to, to continue to provide services without, running out of money and having to, essentially close doors. And so when we went from 34% to 7%, and so a key thing this year is going to be rebuilding that reserve, because I think one of the things we've learned was that it really is important to strive to hit that 50% mark, so that we can survive these types of scenarios. I think we only did because we had so much in reserve when this initially happened. And so I would say right now we're getting close to being back to the reserve level we were at before. But again, the key takeaway is that we saw how quickly it dropped down to 7%. A second part of that is that the one decision made by the city council last year that I think is going to pay off over the long term is the idea of dedicating the cannabis tax revenues towards rebuilding the reserve until we meet that 50% mark. So that money will go straight into the savings account until we hit our savings goal. And we anticipated, again, this is where you can see maybe some impacts on businesses. We had anticipated that this year the cannabis tax would increase from about $360,000 received to $420,000, but the recent returns show that we're going to probably still stay at the $360,000 level. The main reason being we had expected one of the manufacturing businesses to open and to add to the $360,000, but it hasn't opened yet. And in fact, both manufacturing businesses are still preparing to open. And I can't confirm this, but I think that they've both been delayed, because of all of these things. I think they would have been open without the impacts of the pandemic. And so the good news there, though, is that $360,000 or so every year will go into the reserve until we finally meet our 50% goal. And that's a key item moving forward. Lastly, and one of the reasons why we wanted to make sure to get this item to council as soon as possible is that the city has finally received the first Rescue Plan Act COVID assistance funding. The city hadn't received any of that funding up until recently. And so we received $893,000, and we expect a second payment at the end, towards the end of this fiscal year. We are in a very unique situation, and I've said this in a couple council meetings, so sorry if I'm repeating, but the Rescue Plan Act funding is based on how many residents you have. And so Ojai is a city in a unique situation. There's a couple other small cities that get a lot of visitors that are in the same situation, but we are definitely the minority, where getting a little bit of funding per resident is not going to make up the massive amount of funding and revenue we lost from all of the visitors who typically come in. And so just to kind of give a basic figure, we estimate that we've lost over $4 million from COVID so far, with some of those numbers we showed earlier, like the hotel tax dropping almost $1 million in 1 year. And so when we received $893,000, our staff recommendation at this point is there are categories that you can define that funding in, and there's a few categories that we have the option to define it as. We're recommending we define it as 100% lost revenue replacement, because we definitely can show that we lost more revenue than we are going to receive. And the positive thing about designating it as lost revenue replacement, that allows us to utilize the funds for any COVID-19 related expenses, but also to allow any additional funds to go towards rebuilding the reserve. Since that had been dropped so low, we can put this back into the reserve and rebuild the reserve in case of another future emergency situation. And so we do have to make a like a formal city council decision to designate that funding. So the this city council agenda item had the mid-year budget review, but it also had a staff recommendation to approve designation of that $893,000 as lost revenue replacement for those reasons. And so I think that is the end of the presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, James. Any questions? Susan?
This is kind of just a curious question. When the city receives this COVID assistance, does it come as a check in the mail or does it go as an auto deposit?
It's a wire transfer, yeah. Or, you know, it's an automatic transfer.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of cities around us, you know, got, I think a couple of cities in the county got $20 to $30 million. So their transfers were a lot more impressive than our 800,000.
Still good. Randy,
Randy, real briefly, it's interesting seeing how much the county relied on this funding source to survive these past couple years. I know the transportation organizations, VCTC and Gold Coast, relied on them heavily, and they were able to keep running the majority of their routes, getting, you know, citizens to and from work in this county, and a lot of that, and a lot of that service and the continuum of that service was based on this federal money. So it was real important. It's sad that we didn't get a bigger share, but again, if you look at the criteria and the bottom line was population, we took it in the shorts, but $1 million is still $1 million. Do
you have a question, Randy? We're still on questions.
No, we're done.
Okay, Bill?
Are we, no, my only question is procedurally, are we gonna have a public hearing before we open for deliberation and motions? I was just.
Always. Are you?
Yes, I'm ready. I'm ready to, let's do public hearing, yeah.
Any public comments, Gail, on this one?
Anyone in the Zoom meeting who would like to speak, please use the raise hand function now. And right now we have Bill Miley. I'll bring him in. Mr. Miley, you should be able to speak. You can go ahead.
Hi, good evening again. So I read the budget report over. I am impressed about the story it tells of our city administration and the council managing a severe choke on revenues and need for special services and how we're recovering. I would like to see our new information officer share the story in the Ojai Valley News. I'd like to see it posted on the website. And also I'd like to suggest that this story be offered to the Ojai School District for classes that deal with government, economics, and businesses. It's a good case study on how government can function well in difficult times. As I see this, okay, whoops. I do have a suggestion. In the chart showing annual revenues and expenditures under contract services, it only shows that 24% of the planning department money has been spent by the end of this December. As I see the department has a huge workload, especially now with update of the general plan. Recently, 2 planning commission items had to be continued as the item was incomplete on the agenda. It appears they're understaffed. As someone who usually has comments on planning items, I get frustrated by what seems to be the lack of time by planning staff to evaluate public input and make comments on it during the public commission meeting. With more staff, that would be possible, and I believe make public transparency effort better. So why has only 24% of the planning budget been spent in 6 months? Thank you.
Eric, I can give a very brief response to that, if
please,
if I may. So I will note, yes, the 2 items were continued recently as incomplete. So we're working on addressing that and correcting that. That is something that we want to do better at. But as far as the 24% on the contract services, there's actually one big reason for that. And that is that the biggest contract that the city has right now, bar none, except for the eventual street paving contract. That's the other bigger, well, actually, the sheriff's contract, street paving contract, and then the third biggest contract that Mr. Miley is referring to is our general plan update contract, which is about $600,000. You know, it's a huge contract for us. And so this year, the budget includes like 80% of the work for the general plan update, because the general plan update started the day of the pandemic. And so we keep pushing, you know, the public outreach portion to when we can have in-person meetings. And so we are expecting that to start moving quickly, but that's why when you look at the budget, it looks like there's a big chunk of contract services that we haven't used, but it's actually all the general plan update work that as soon as we're able to have these town hall meetings and things, we're going to start, you know, having all of those regularly. So just to explain, you know, why there's a big chunk of unspent community development contracts. So,
thank you, James. All right, let's move on to discussion. Bill?
Yeah, I want to concur with Mr. Miley. This is one of the better mid-year budget reviews that I've seen, if not the best, particularly the way it's set up on the 50% basis and the explanations that you provided, Mr. Vega. I thought it was absolutely excellent. And so when everybody's had their say, I'm ready to offer a motion.
Anybody else? Yeah, all the right moves, James. You remind me of Joe Burrow.
Oh, now.
Do you have a motion, Bill?
I'll make a motion if no one objects. I would like that we receive and file the mid-year budget review.
Wait, okay, never mind. Go ahead. Sorry. I'm
sorry. And that I'll continue with the motion. We don't have to go forward with it now. That we approve the receipt of the $893,000 in ARPA COVID assistance funding and designate this funding as lost revenue replacement.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Okay, roll call, please. Gail?
Mayor Sticks?
Yes.
Councilmember Wyrick?
Yes.
Councilmember Francina?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Haney?
Yes.
Councilmember Blatz?
Yes.
Wonderful. All right. Thanks again, James.
Thank you. And I see Pam Greer, Finance Director's in the waiting room. So thanks to her and her team, but she's off the hook for tonight. So
thank you, Pam. All right, we'll move on to number 6.
Can I just make one comment, Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead. Pam
did such a good job. She didn't have to answer any questions. So congratulations. Congratulations, Pam.
That's the finance director's goal.
Mayor, by the way, she has a bobblehead ram in her office.
Just saying.
I don't know if she does.
I don't know. We may need a burrow.
Okay. Number 6, the permanent electronic emergency message board proposed for Rotary Park. So the recommendation is that City Council approve the purchase and installation of the permanent electronic emergency message board and battery backup.
Thank you, Mayor. And I have 2 pictures because we're talking about purchasing these items. So I just want to show these 2 images of what we're proposing. But this item has been long discussed. I think it actually started back as the Libby Bowl committee recommendation, maybe 4 or 5 years back, to create an electronic message board. And so it kind of started there. And at some point, the city council asked the disaster council to kind of, take a look at it and see if it makes sense, where it should be, how it could work. And so this item was reviewed over, I think it was about 3 or 4 meetings by the disaster council. And the disaster council reviewed a few designs, which are included in the packet, and some of the features, and ended up recommending that the city council proceed with installing this first message board. Ultimately, there's a recommendation to have 2, one on the east end of town as well. But the recommendation was to proceed with this first message board, which would include a 4-foot by 8-foot video or display board. It would be double-sided, so readable from both sides, located at the Y as shown in this image. It would have a masonry rock base style, so it should match the what's already installed. It would have an adjustable font and color that could be modified for different types of messages. The disaster council recommended this particular board, which has remote update capability, so that we could update it from the office or the police station, or I'm sorry, city hall or the police station. And then also the disaster council stated that one of the key important items would be getting a battery backup capability for this, so that if there was a power outage, such as during the Thomas fire, that we'd be able to maintain the board when we need it the most, essentially. And so I just have the 2 pictures, one showing it from coming into town at the Y, and one showing it from from the other direction, heading out of town. This particular sign was based on a sign that was identified at Constitution Park in Camarillo, that people felt, or the disaster council felt, was a low-key, easy to read sign, not very flashy, not going to distract traffic. And so we were able to get the same installers to give us our quote and our proposal. So it'd be the same installers and the same sign as that one identified. The cost is $42,000, but we also estimate that the battery backup will cost approximately $10,000 to wire that and install that. The battery backup does not come with the sign, so we'll have to handle that separately. And so if council wishes to proceed, we're recommending allocating $50,000 from the equipment replacement fund and $8,000 from Measure C, which was already included in Measure C and was included in the adopted budget, for a total of $58,000. It may be a little bit less than that, but we were kind of estimating high for the battery backup. But if we're able to do it for less, we would do it for less. And so the recommendation is that the city council consider this design and approve the design, and then we also prepared a draft policy, which is included in the packet, that states that this message board will only be used for emergency messaging, city-generated content, or city-sponsored events. And as you know, the image here is the Ojai Music Festival. That's been that's an event that the city has sponsored in various ways, just like the 4th of July events, or there's a couple of key other events. And so those messages would be eligible. We wouldn't post anything commercial, any sort of advertisements, any items for sale, or any political or religious messaging. So the policy proposes, is included. So with that, our recommendation is for council to approve the purchase and installation and approve the policy. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, James. Any questions? Susan?
Can you review again how that sign could look? Because I sure wouldn't want to look at what I saw, the black with the orange.
Yeah, and we showed that because it was easy to see on the in the packet. But
Yeah.
but the font and the colors and everything are all adjustable. And so
It could be white and green or something like that.
yeah, it could, yeah, it does not have to be black and red.
Okay. And well,
It probably wouldn't be black and red. I think
Yeah.
we were, that was just to make it stand out. So
yeah. I guess I just feel a lot of hesitation. The only way I could justify spending this kind of money is if it's truly will serve a purpose if there's an emergency. That's how I could justify it. I couldn't justify it just to promote events or anything like that.
We're still on
Yeah.
questions. So,
Okay.
Randy, you have a question?
And just any thoughts of putting a sheet of plywood up on 4x4s in the same location so that the community can look at it future time coming year?
like I think I understood, but I might have lost you at the end there. The
sheet of plywood is 4 feet by 8 feet.
Oh, okay.
Supported by 2 4x4 posts and drawn it with big bold letters, future emergency sign each year. And let's see what the community thinks for 2 weeks.
We could do it. I think my only fear is I think most people will say that the plywood looks terrible and they won't like, they're not going to get excited about the.
Well, what they have to see is that's a big sign, 4 feet by 8 feet. It's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge.
So, yeah. We could do that if that's council's direction. So.
Ryan, question?
Yeah. James, isn't there one of these that's similar in Camarillo?
Yeah, Constitution Park in Camarillo.
It'd probably do a better service to have a picture of that one overlaid instead of I mean, I'm sure you worked really hard on the optics on that, but I don't know if that sign was quite conducive, but I think and you may be able to pull it up, but in front of there at City Hall, I think most of us have probably been there for, I don't know, VCOG used to meet there and all kinds of stuff. Theirs is red though. It is black with, I think, red lighting on it.
Yeah, I was trying to pull it up while we spoke. I don't know if I'll be able to pull it up that quick, but.
Any public comment on this item, Gail?
Anyone in the Zoom meeting who would like to speak, please use the raised hand function now. And we have one person so far. Excuse me, Larry Steingold. Mr. Steingold, you should be able to speak. If you would unmute yourself, you can go ahead. Mr. Steingold, are you there? It looks like you're still muted. If you could unmute yourself, you can go ahead and speak. Okay, maybe he's not, oh, there, he's available now. Mr. Steingold, you can go ahead.
I just have one question. How much money are we out of pocket for the ATP? And how much money are we going to be into it for by the time it's completely finished, including maintenance? Would all that money contribute to our new budget and fill a hole for other services? Just a question, because if I don't bring it up, everybody else will.
Thank you, Larry.
So.
And next we have Bill Miley. Mr. Miley, you should be able to speak. If you don't, go ahead and unmute yourself. There you go. You can go ahead.
Hey, yeah. I like the idea. It's a one-time expenditure. It produces a product that will work every day after that. It's a way of communicating to hundreds of people every day without standing there and waving a sign. We don't have to write a newsletter. We don't have to put it in the newspaper. It's read by hundreds, maybe even thousands of people every day. It's a great idea. Emergency messages have to get out. What better way than to do it this way, among other ways? Also, it provides information on activities that this town has that people need to know about that make our economy work. So it's a great idea. And I hope at least 3 of you vote yes. I'd like all of you to vote yes. One time, folks, and the return continues, continues, and continues.
all right.
We will profit forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Very good.
Okay, that's it, Gail. So we will move on to discussion.
And I can, Mayor, can I pull up that picture quickly
Sure, thank you.
of Constitution Park? And so this is the same sign maker and the same message board sign that we are purchasing, just with different, we're proposing rock work around it. So. And I think theirs is 3 foot by 7 foot, and ours is proposed to be 4 foot by 8 foot, because of the placement being a little farther off the road. So, and then just to answer the question very quickly about the ATP, I know that comes up very frequently. That money can't be used for any other purpose. If we don't proceed with the ATP, it goes back to the state or the feds. So that money is not able to be used for projects like these. The city has not spent any money in the last 3 years. I think 4 years ago, the city did, there had been some funds expended, but there has not been any money out of pocket from the city included in the last 2 budgets or anticipated in the future budget. So.
Bill?
Would if we install this, would that be a substitute for the sheriff's department mobile sign where we could get rid of that? I think it's kind of ugly, and put those messages on this instead.
Yeah, exactly. And so, those would be the 2 options. We're using the trailers right now because we don't have this type of sign. And I know, at various times the messaging has changed where it sometimes is really critical. Right now, we just kind of have a message to get people connected to use the app and things. But we're using that because we don't have this sign right now. And so those would be the 2 options we could use. We could install a sign, or we could continue to use the trailers.
Yeah, I think this would look a lot better than the trailer. Myself.
Ryan?
Yeah, I will say that I undoubtedly believe that the public will overwhelmingly hate it. And I think that's just a part of natural reaction in Ojai, and part that it is going to be a distracting element coming through the Y. And the reality is we're going to call it an emergency sign, but there's only an emergency every so often. It's going to end up being a council meeting tonight, event coming up, all that kind of stuff that the alternative, the other version of this we have is across Signal Street at the entrance to the arcade. And that's, much more Ojai, but and then that's what we do to promote events. And that's what we use. And that's not something that we have access to set up for an emergency, but I also really don't understand if there's an emergency in town, what is it keeping people from coming into town? Because like I've said before, if you're driving out of town, it doesn't really do you much good to get notified of the emergency. And I wouldn't, I'm over having the sheriff's sign there, but I don't think it's going to be there much longer. And I think it's probably outstayed its welcome. None of us anticipated it being there to remind us to wear masks for this particular length of time. But Randy, you brought up a good point. Like, could we test it before we just upset everybody? That's a tough one. I mean, I don't know what value it's really going to bring on a day-to-day basis. I do agree with Bill Miley. I mean, it is something that you put it in, you get it there forever, but how much what information would we anticipate having rolling on this thing on a, let's say, a non-COVID regular, timeline? What is it going to say most of the time? And I don't know, James, do you have a answer or suggestion to that? I mean, do we have a anticipation for what this thing would be used for once it's not reminding people of, other than our meetings and masks?
Yeah, well, it's one of those things you hope you don't have to use it, right? Because it's an emergency item. So for me, it'd be great if all we ever put on it is the temperature and the time, and that's it, and that would probably be kind of the default, information on there. Other than that, it would be the emergency information or the event information.
So there's always some event coming up. Is it going to say Ojai tennis tournament? Is it going to say Ojai day? Is it going to say, we have something almost every month during the year. There's enough to have something over Ojai Avenue on Signal Street all year.
Yeah. That's what we're proposing, is that we allow the city sponsored events, which the ones on the banners do not have to be city sponsored events. It could just be any event. So there would be fewer than that, but it would probably be, one a month or one, about one a month, I think.
Well, let me ask this then. Do you anticipate being a static message for a number of days, or do you expect it to change and say, city council meeting tonight at 6 o'clock, or planning commission meeting tonight at whatever, or are we thinking it would just have one particular message and not be changing all the time?
Yeah, our plan right now would be that it would be like, city of Ojai temperature time, unless it was, the week before an event, one of those sponsored events, or an emergency, basically. So it'd mostly be that, temperature time, but all that is up to council, and the policy could be modified at this point. It hasn't been adopted. So all that could be adjusted. If we don't want to do events, advertise events, we don't have to, but that's what we propose in the draft policy.
Well, I'll just say this, then I'll let somebody move on. But if it's purely for emergencies and we're not going to use it enough to get the value, because I just don't see it having a lot of value in emergency to be at the Y. The only emergency it's going to say is what's 120 in Ojai to not come in. But the flip side is, I just think that if it's there, we're going to end up putting messages on it, because having a blank board, we're just having the time and temperature, which is in darn near every vehicle that goes by it already listed. And there's one at even the banks are taking them down. My dad made a career out of selling them, and he wasn't finishing his career selling them. But I just don't think if we put it there, it's going to be like people are going to be asking to get on it all the time. We can create some policies, but I don't see it being blank until an emergency. Anyway, I'll move on.
Definitely going to be a challenge. That's why we said we'd have to propose a policy with it, because we already get inquiries from people of if they'll be able to use it once it's installed. So.
Randy, and then Bill, and then Susan.
So the what is this? The sandwich method here is say something good, and so I'll say I do like the sign, and then the meat and the potatoes part of it is I agree 100% with Ryan, and then the third part is interesting is the disaster council people. I've been in your chair, I've been in your seat, because when we did this with Libby Bull, we spent a year on it. You don't know how many public comment sections we had on this. And for tonight, it just seems like we're not going to give the public any room to comment. We're just going to make a decision and run with it. So that's what I'd be opposed to. I think we need community input. It's going to be, it's either going to be loved or it's going to be hated. But I don't think this is something we need to stuff down the community's throat. My only, from a design aspect, I think sticking a sign 4 feet by 8 feet, 4 feet off the ground, just is going to make it look that much horrible. If you'll notice, the signage there in Camarillo was maybe 12 inches off the ground. So I think it's going to be a little less obtrusive if it was lower to the ground. And, again, I think you've picked a spot, but you haven't looked at all the spots in the community. And there's a lot of duplicating signs right out front there, along with the railing system around that front side of the park there. So I don't know. I think a little more thought. I like the idea. I see the benefits. I just think you need more public input.
Bill and then Souza.
Yeah, I'm certainly not opposed. I think it's probably a good idea to find a way to, like when you, in some places where you're having a view shed area and somebody wants a building permit, they have to erect something to show, what's going to be there as part of the public comment and public review. So I'm fine with that. I do want to point out a couple of things, though. The Disaster Council actually spent a lot of time on this by first identifying a real communications hole in our current system, and then going into various designs. And one of the reasons for this particular recommendation was to not spread out, was to try to keep things consolidated with that existing location, and that getting up in the air a little bit provides a lot more visibility, especially on the two-way on the street going both ways. So I'm not saying this is perfect, but I am saying that the Disaster Council did a lot of discussion on this and back and forth and up and down. But I think finding a way to get some more public comment would be by doing a visualization for public response would be a good idea.
Souza?
Well, after I heard Bill Miley's points, how you can communicate repeatedly to hundreds and thousands of people, I began to consider that it's a good idea. I'm considering what everyone's saying. Everyone is making valid points. I certainly don't want to put in something that the community will not like. So we don't have to make a decision tonight, right? We can get more community input. I definitely don't object to it. I think it could be really when we need it, it will prove to be of value. I think when the time comes that we need it. Perhaps you could give an example of the kind of emergency message it could say, to make the community, so that the community would see the value of it. And then could we intersperse the messaging with things like, welcome to Ojai, slow down. We could have some kind of upbeat messages that are positive, on weekends when there's a lot of tourists. When you make maybe the policy could be explained a little bit better. I mean, I think it's fairly clear of what it can't do, but informational post, provide information for city-sponsored events, but does that preclude the kind of message that I just mentioned?
Under that proposed policy, yes, but we can, we can take all this feedback and bring a revised version back, especially because I'm getting a sense that we won't approve it tonight. And so we could do that, and then we could look for a way to do a mock-up sign that would also tell people how to give us feedback on it. We can do those two things moving forward.
Yeah, I actually like the sign if we can change the the lettering in the background. I like the rocks, and yeah, I think we can talk about this discuss this some more.
Okay.
And it's good to know that the Disaster Council did put in a lot of thought. So this is a kind of a follow-up to the sign that was originally proposed in front of Libby Park, right?
That was the original conversation, and it kind of yeah.
Okay, and so the new location is the entrance, and then over by the Soul Park.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so during an emergency, say that during the Thomas fire, it would have said something about evacuation routes or what? Is that the sort of thing you have in mind?
Yeah, or like even during the Thomas fire, it's there's so many emergencies all going on at the same time. Like we had the boil water advisories, that'd be something that we could post on there. Shelter information, where to evacuate, where to shelter in place. So all of those would be things that we could potentially put out with these message boards. We can, we have shown over the last 2 years, to Councilmember Blatt's point, we thought it would be a couple of weeks and it's been 2 years, but the trailers have been out getting some of the same messaging out, with the different situations we've gone through. So they'd be used similarly to how those have been used at this point.
Yeah, I would be inclined to support it, but it just seems like it's good to get the public response now rather than after it's already done. But other than that, I would be inclined to support it because when we need it, it'll prove its worth. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Matt, do you want to jump in before Randy with some legal insight?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to note for the council to bear in mind on the policy, when we get to adopting that, one of the key points is to make sure that it is always a city message. We do not want to create this as any kind of a public forum or a limited public forum or a qualified public forum. This is a government forum, government signed, government messages. Hence the reference throughout the policy to city-sponsored events, city-run programming. It's always got to be our speech to ensure that we always retain control of the message.
Thank you, Matt. Randy?
So, just what Matt said, that I just wanted to state, I think in my comment section on the policy was city event coordinator to have final say on all messaging content so that there is no discrepancy. We're going to filter it through one person, and she will be the one that posts it. So she will have the final say, not the person submitting. And then there's always going to be a first come, first serve. How many times a month does someone get to use it, or is something broadcast? I think that needs to go into it. But again, getting back to this, when we were discussing it in the Libby committee, we were looking at it as for marketing Ojai, for city events, and that's where we started. And then the other part of it was, and remember, we did this before Thomas. And the other part of it was, okay, in the event of an emergency, it would be great to have the opportunity to post information. So we went at it from the marketing standpoint, public awareness standpoint versus the emergency. So I get the emergency, but I kind of agree with Ryan in hindsight that, I don't know how many emergencies that we're going to have that are going to, that we're going to need a $62,000 investment. And then because it's on the public right of way, I imagine the structure is going to have to be built on a prevailing wage contract. So there's going to have to be an RFP put out. So we went from 42 to a battery backup to 52 to now a prevailing wage construction project. So we're probably looking at $100,000. So while we gather public input, I think it's important that maybe we put together and we get some numbers, James, so that when it does come back, we're a little more accurate as to what we're going to spend.
I just want to add, in terms of the philosophy, having talked to fire experts, it's about habituation. So training to look in the same spot information is really effective, according to the data and the experts. So I think that is super important. And I want to apologize to James for coming at this late moment, although new ideas and new information always come, because I think it's really important that it's in a permanent spot and at the same time mobile, for two reasons. One, there could be a disaster at the Y, right? So that doesn't make any sense. And number two, to be able to be in the most important thing in the middle of a disaster is to be adaptable and flexible. So being able to move it to a different venue, if that is the most important thing. You know, the reason why I think the experts are hesitant, that want something permanent, is because there's no glitch, you know, in terms of communication with staff, although we have such a great staff and you're so on it, James, that I don't see that happening. So I think that makes more sense to have it mobile. Bill, and then Randy.
Yeah, first of all, Randy, on the prevailing wage issue, I believe this is a quote from a contractor to put it in. So I'm not sure if James could respond to that, but I think this is a pretty solid, a solid quote.
Yeah, we obtained 3 quotes, and that was that is a, you know, a firm proposal at this point. So.
And then, yeah, I don't know what to say about having it mobile instead of permanent. That's something that the Disaster Council hasn't discussed. So, yeah, I don't know what to say to that. I'm going to propose a motion to continue the item pending soliciting additional public input with a mock-up board. Then we could take up some of these other questions when as part of that process. That's my motion.
Well, we're not done yet, Mayor, discussing, but
Okay, go ahead, Randy, and then Susan.
first of all, I'd like to thank Bill for bringing that to my attention. I'm looking at the document a little closer, so it is inclusive. That's a good thing to know. I thought it was $42,000 just for the LED television set. And then the other thing is, I was just thinking about, you know, we would be using it on a regular basis. You know, we've got a disaster ATP on the 33. So that could be posted 24/7. That's what it needs to be put there. Please don't drive this way, ATP disaster. Thank you.
Susan?
Good thing we have a sense of humor. So as part of your motion, Bill, can you add finding out the pros and cons of mobile or permanent?
Oh, yeah, that's implied. Absolutely.
It's implied. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
In terms of additional community input and evaluation of alternatives. I'm just not sure what to think about the mobile versus permanent. I really not.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear from the experts on that.
Yeah. Okay.
A lot of rock to move.
Well, not
going to look like that.
No, it won't look like, it'll be different. All right, well, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, roll call, please, Gail.
Councilmember Blatz,
Yes.
Councilmember Francina,
Yes.
Mayor Pro excuse me, Mayor Pro Tem Haney,
Yes.
Councilmember Wyrick,
Yes.
Mayor Sticks.
Yes. Okay, wonderful. All right, thank you very much. And we'll move on to council member reports.
It's late. I'm tired.
Okay, all right. City manager report.
I'm in Central Time Zone.
I'm tired too, so I'll pass.
I have a question, Mr. City Manager, when it's appropriate, Mayor Sticks.
Sure, go ahead.
James, I know we've been getting some updates on the ATP project, and we had provided direction that we wanted to maybe bifurcate to be able to bid out the downtown components of this, or the Y East components of this as an option. Where are we on that, and able to get something going on the Y East aspect as we work through all the issues on the 33?
Yeah, so it's funny. The item I was going to go over, and I didn't think everybody had the energy to talk about, was the schedule for the ATP. I'll answer that specific question in a minute, but we are tentatively, and I think we're going to be able to make it based on our work and meetings today. We are planning to bring the ATP back, both the Ojai Avenue portion at 95% with the feedback from council regarding the curb ramps and curb ramps and improvements. And the Maricopa Highway 35% design on February 22nd. That's what we're working towards, and I think we're on pace. At that time, our plan was to get the approval on the 95% design on the Ojai Avenue portion with the changes, and then we'd basically be ready to move that one forward.
Great.
We'll include kind of an update on that at that time. But so on that February 22nd meeting, we are planning to bring the ATP item. We're planning to have our police contract or our sheriff's contract update and assessment, and also bring another disaster council recommendation back regarding development of an evacuation plan. So those are the three big items. We also have a general plan amendment for a project on 309 North Blanche. So those will be the bulk of the February 22nd meeting. And then I just wanted to let everybody know, we are working on the skateboarding and bicycling enforcement options. But with that heavy agenda, that item is probably going to get bumped to March 8th. So that's when that item is coming back.
That would set us up for what I just discussed then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Randy?
I was just along this discussion, I was just wondering why we didn't move ATP as a standalone meeting. Can we, or should we? It's going to be pretty contentious still.
We could if that was we can do that if the council is interested in having a standalone ATP meeting.
Council?
So if we where would the can you repeat again what else is on the agenda and at what point would be the ATP?
So we were planning to have the sheriff's contract review, and then the ATP item, and then the evacuation plan. Those would be the three items in that order.
And
the disaster council's recommendation regarding evacuation plan.
That sounds doable to me. And we're having it at Libby in person is the plan, unless it rains.
Yeah, that was the goal, assuming that the weather cooperates.
Yeah, I would say that if the weather doesn't cooperate, then we have a special meeting so that we can do it in person. But if the weather is fine, it seems like it could just be on the agenda. I don't know. I'll wait to hear what other council members think.
Sounds doable to me for the 22nd.
Yeah.
Any other future agenda items?
Yeah. And I have a question too. I'll ask the question first. Can you follow up and find out about the transformer that is at the top of Foothill? The Pratt Trail, because that is a concern. A fire thing, that would not be good.
We'll follow up, and then if I could add to that, we are appealing an item to the Ventura County Planning Commission this week regarding the wireless antenna that the county is installing just out, was proposing to have installed in Miners Oaks. And so I don't think that's the same, I don't think that's the same thing that was being referred to, but we're working on a couple items related to.
Yeah, the concern with the other one was if there's a fire hazard up there. And then, so back to Drown Street, we're going to, as part of Bill's motion, we're going to look at the intersection and a possible crosswalk, is my understanding. And so, along with that, I would be interested in, again, assessing the speed limit on Grand Avenue, and I'll see if any other council members are interested in in that, in supporting that. Mm. All right.
It's 30 now.
Yes, and all those little side streets are 25, and it's a route to school and to Sarzodi Park. It's a dog. I mean, people are walking their dogs. There's mothers with strollers.
I'm not sure, given it's
residential. It's a
yes.
it's one of those weird streets that's it's an arterial.
It's arterial as well as residential.
As well as
right.
residential. That's the dilemma.
Well, that would be a potential future agenda item for if you want to find two people to do that. Bill, you have a future agenda item?
I'm just curious, in the two things that we have on our workload, and I'm just wondering where it might be fitted in terms of the future. I'm not trying to push it, James, just asking. One is we gave pretty clear direction on expanding the cannabis options, and I wonder where the timing was on that. And the other thing that's, I think, even more and more important as time goes on is the whole thing of local discretion with secret review.
Mhm.
Where are we on maybe looking at those two items?
Yeah, I have the date that we are expecting to bring the cannabis item to the plant. Both of these items are going to the Planning Commission,
right,
as the next step. And so the Planning Commission has a special meeting tomorrow. That's the general plan update, and I'm just saying that as a pitch for anybody that wants to participate. That meeting's going tomorrow. But the next meeting, we're expecting to have the item that got continued related to the Gables come back on February 15th. And so the next meeting after that, which I believe is March 2nd, is the one that we're expecting to have the cannabis review, or cannabis options. I don't have the date off the top of my head for the local, the CEQA item, so that one I'll follow up on.
Yeah, I think that's really something that we need to look at, because there's so many aspects of not exercising that local discretion leading to undesirable outcomes and the consequence of awkwardness with the Planning Commission. It's one of those things where.
Are we debating this? Or are you gonna? I mean, we're making future agenda items. Or what's going on?
The reason I brought up was that there wasn't any set time period for discussing it, and we have brought it up for direction several times.
Well, James, make sure we bring it up next time for direction further, but let's not debate it right now.
Can we bring it back to the chair? Future agenda items. Bill, you're finished. Randy,
I didn't get to finish mine. All of a sudden it was Bill's turn. I didn't finish. I didn't know. I don't know what happened.
Well, you have to have two people to get it on the agenda.
Okay, and so no one is supporting it? Is that, I just wasn't clear if anybody was going to support that.
Tonight, we're not.
We didn't hear anybody. No. Not currently. Randy, future agenda item?
Yeah, I just wanted to know how we can remove redundancy from the agenda item. So can we put something that's been agendized and fails, or we have a discussion and it loses through the discussion and the council debate, and we put a timetable that you can't bring it back for the length of your tenure? I just get so tired of all of these issues being brought back and back and back and back. You know, it's like they're settled. Why are we doing this? We had an incredibly smooth meeting tonight. We had great discussion. We had excellent leadership. And now we're going to get back to redundancy.
Well,
we need to bring this back. We need to bring that back. Like I said, that's just my opinion, but it's tiring.
Well, as we know, two councilors can put something on the agenda so that, that can be arranged. But at this point, I
would like the city attorney to weigh in on this.
So what I'd recommend, if I didn't mean to interrupt you, Councilmember Haney.
Well, go ahead.
What I'd recommend is that if there's support from two, and there may be support from two, we have a discussion on the agenda about the protocols. The current rule that allows any two members to put something back on the agenda, no matter what may have happened in the past, is in the protocols. That can be changed if the council so desires, but that's amending the protocol. So my recommendation would be, not tonight, that come back on an agenda as a protocols discussion. And at that time, we can bring forward a number of options. Cities deal with this question lots of different ways. We can bring back some options for council consideration if there was a second for Mayor Pro Tem Haney's request for protocols to be on the
I'm going to
agenda.
pull that. Matt, thank you for that explanation, Mayor. I'm going to pull that and I'm going to digest that response and have a little deeper conversation with the city attorney. Thank you.
Great.
Sounds good. I'll give you a call tomorrow.
On that note, thank you all for a productive meeting, and we got through a lot tonight, so much appreciated, and gratitude to staff and council members, and have a sweet night. We're adjourned.